of the Arizona Board of Regents was called to order on Wednesday afternoon before convening an executive session. Today's public meeting is scheduled until 4:45 p.m. A link to the live stream of the public meeting is available on the board's website under ABOR Live or by going to YouTube and searching for ABOR News. We do have a full schedule today, so I will be mindful of time. At this point, Regent Mata, can you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Of course. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So my first order of business is I would really like to welcome and thank Student Regent Designee David Zaragoza for joining us today. I believe he's in the front row somewhere. He will begin his term on July 1st of 2023. So we look forward to having him join us at the table soon. And in other Student Regent news, this is Regent Conyers' final board meeting. And we will have time later to acknowledge her for her service to the board. But Rachel, it has been a joy having you with us. President Cruz Rivera, thank you very much for you and your team for hosting the meeting. And now I'm just going to get into business. Earlier this month, the board launched the Arizona Healthy Tomorrow program, a comprehensive university-led statewide effort. Sorry, I feel like I'm echoing. To address critical workforce shortages among physicians, nurses, and other healthcare professionals. Currently, is estimated approximately 3 million Arizonans have limited access to primary care, and more than 1 in 3 Arizona hospitals face a critical staffing shortage. Arizona Healthy Tomorrow will leverage the combined resources and expertise of Arizona State University, Northern Arizona University, and the University of Arizona to address this urgent workforce development challenge while accelerating Arizona's leadership in biosciences, life sciences, and research. Today, the board is expected to take action on the approval of $30 million in TRIF funding to support the development of this initiative. Through a new ABOR community grant before the board for approval today, firefighting agencies will be better equipped to offer solutions for personnel who are priced out of their jobs in high-cost housing areas. The research grant will have a positive impact on the future of our rural communities by answering critical questions regarding firefighters' housing issues and propose solutions to the problem that affect these communities. We take it for granted that firefighters will need to be ready to respond when our loved ones have medical emergencies or fires break out. The reality is that firefighters often can't afford housing in the communities in which they work, and that's troubling and not tenable for the future. This grant is designed to offer solutions to this issue so firefighters can focus on what matters most, fighting fires and saving lives. The board is also asked today to approve a suite of metrics that evaluate efficiency at the universities. These metrics provide the board with important information to impact future policy and decision-making in academics, administration, facilities, and more universities. And I'd like to express my thanks to Regent Herbold for leading the development of these metrics. We will also have an update from the student regents on student food and housing insecurity. And this is a national issue, and we're proud that our student regents have led the efforts at our universities to implement new initiatives to connect students with helpful basic need resources for food and housing. So I look forward to our discussion today and thank the board and universities and staff for this important work to impact the future of our state, our students, and our universities. Before we move to the call to the audience, Regent Duvall has asked to say a few words.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a tad unusual, but it's appropriate. We will be recognizing you in full at the end of the afternoon for your service as chair, as you wrap up your term as our chair, but not your term as regent. But we thought it was appropriate that we need to sort of start the farewell tour by being visited by a special guest. And I am so delighted because in addition to being a regent, you are obviously a distinguished community leader who has led many organizations in this town, and it is well recognized. But the appropriate way we thought of recognizing this specifically would be to invite the Flagstaff Mayor, Becky Daggett, to join us for a minute. Becky and I are old and dear friends. She is a accomplished leader in town, a positive, optimistic, forward-looking leader for the city of Flagstaff, going to be a transformative figure in her term as mayor. And I'm delighted that she's here to recognize our outgoing chair. Mayor, thank you.
It's coming.
Yeah. Somebody in the back of the room is in charge.
You're good.
There we go.
Okay, on now. Okay, wonderful. I thought I was going to have to speak very loudly. Arizona Board of Regents Chair Lyndall Manson serves the state of Arizona as a consummate champion of higher education, students, and Arizona's public universities with strong leadership skills characterized by integrity and dedication. Chair Manson is leading the board during the monumental task of redesigning general education coursework at the universities to equip students with skills that will serve them throughout their lifetimes, including critical thinking, civil discourse, and engaged citizenry. As co-chair of the Northern Arizona Presidential Search Advisory Committee, Regent Manson was instrumental in bringing in a leader making a lasting contribution to the university's success, who serves as a tireless champion, innovator, and visionary on behalf of the university. President Jose Luis Cruz Rivera, NAU's 17th president. And I just have to go off script here for a second. Thank you so much. The relationship between the city and the university is better than ever, and we are so delighted by your decision. And I'm not just saying that because he's here. Her strong business and fiscal background experience has advanced board oversight of university budgets, revenues, and finances. Chair Manson has a long history of dedication to Arizona's children and their success, including serving as president and treasurer for the Northland Preparatory Academy Board of Directors, during which time the school was ranked among the country's top 100 high schools and enrollment increased by 88%. Chair Manson served as Arizona Friends of Foster Children Foundation Board of Directors President, Grants Committee Chair and Board Member, directly contributing to the self-esteem of foster children while enriching their social, athletic, and educational opportunities through her actions. Chair Manson increased fundraising and volunteer involvement for the D. Miguel Elementary School PTO while working as president, secretary, and site council member. Now, therefore, I, Becky Daggett, by the virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of Flagstaff, do hereby proclaim June 15th as Lyndall Manson Day in Flagstaff.
Is that a one-time thing? One-time.
And we dressed appropriately. Thank you. Thank you. Wow. For those of you who know me, I'm not stunned speechless very often. Mayor Daggett, Fred, the Board of Regents, I'm not going to go into this. It has been my true honor to serve with this organization, with this board, with these people. This is one of the smartest, most committed, caring, dedicated group of people I have ever been associated with. And I will be sad to see it end, but fortunately it's not ending that soon. And I will be pleasantly relieved to hand it over to the more than capable Regent Duval at the end of this month. But thank you again. That's tremendous. Okay, back to business. Our first item is the call to the audience. If you have any materials for the Regents, please give them to our board secretary, Suzanne Templin, who is over here with her hand up. And she will distribute them to the Regents. Pursuant to board policy, time has been set aside for the call to the audience. This is an opportunity for individuals to address the entire board in a public setting to express their views or concerns regarding matters of governance. The board reserves the right to limit the number of presenters on any particular topic. Regents do not respond to comments made during the call to the public. However, we do hear your remarks, and we ask the appropriate person to follow up and provide us with information on any issues raised. When you're called to speak, please proceed to the lectern. To keep us on schedule, each speaker has no more than 3 minutes. As a courtesy to each speaker, Suzanne will hold up a sign signaling how much time you have remaining. At the end of your 3 minutes, we ask that you conclude your remarks. Suzanne?
Our first speaker is Nora Dunbar, followed by Dr. Sanjam Aluwali.
Good afternoon, Regents. My name is Nora Dunbar. I am a teaching professor in the Department of Psychological Sciences. I've been with the university for 15 years, and I have previously served on the Faculty Senate. I'm here today on behalf of the faculty members of the University Union of Northern Arizona. I would like to draw attention to the Arizona Board of Regents' overwhelming silence on the ways in which the overturning of Roe versus Wade has profoundly impacted our state, our students, and my fellow workers at NAU. At NAU, our students have access to limited reproductive health care. Students must travel over 2 hours for a preliminary meeting with a reproductive health care specialist. This creates a health inequity in which vital health care is only accessible for those who have time, money, and access to transportation, whereas those who are less fortunate find it nearly impossible to obtain specialized reproductive care. Additionally, when a student faces a reproductive health care crisis and does not have clear guidance about how to find support, students may turn to a trusted faculty or staff member. In an era of restricted discussion around reproductive health, this impacts me and my students because I do not have specific guidance from ABOR or NAU for how to best support students facing such a crisis. Instead, I am left to support students in whatever way I personally see fit, which might put the student, me, and the university at risk. This issue needs attention from ABOR. We are asking that you provide clear information about the reproductive health care services provided to students at our 3 public universities. I ask you to create a tri-university task force to increase equitable access to reproductive health care for the students and workers on Arizona's public university campuses, and to provide members of our community with relevant information about the current ways our systems are either failing or succeeding to support students in this area. Thank you.
Our next speaker, Dr. Sanjam Aluwalia, followed by Michael Rulan.
Good afternoon, Regents and Presidents. Welcome to NAU and Flagstaff. June is truly a glorious time of the year to be here in Northern Arizona. The peonies and the irises are in full bloom. I'm Sanjam Aluwalia, and I want to thank you for this opportunity to address all of you on an important yet somewhat glossed over issue of reproductive and sexual health that impacts all students, staff, faculty, and wider communities across the state. As a faculty member at NAU, my research and teaching focus is on reproductive histories and politics, which I largely examine through an intersectional, interdisciplinary, and a global lens. Today, I want to talk about another A issue around reproductive and sexual health, that is access and accountability within academia. When our students arrive on campus, what can they and their families expect in terms of access to care? And in the process, can they hold all of us accountable for imparting legally accurate information and upholding best healthcare practices to ensure a healthy, safe, and successful completion of their degree programs? For now, we cannot provide abortion care to our students on our state university campuses. That much is clear. We understand the legal constraints under which the universities work. However, since last June, after the unfortunate Dobbs decision, the legal landscape has been in flux. It's constantly shifting and evolving across the country and also within Arizona. We not only need clear directives about the legal framework to help construct a collective understanding and vocabulary around repro health, but we also need to be kept appraised about evolving legalities around this contentious and important area of healthcare. Therefore, we invite all of you and many constituencies directly impacted to dialogue and generate a collective shared understanding of the legal landscape that governs the areas of reproductive and sexual health and that govern areas of reproductive and sexual health and well-being for all of us. Deliberate silence, misinformation, and or disinformation are not sustainable strategies for an issue that is not only nationally, but globally being debated and commented upon. In foregrounding our political and cultural context, we call for a tri-university thoughtful dialogue, conversation, engagement, and collaboration through a joint task force. This will help generate a shared language with which to speak about reproductive health and abortion care so as to communicate in a transparent manner to our existing and prospective students what can or cannot legally be made available to them at our institution. As Arizona students in their reproductive prime, I can assure you that our students and their families are thinking about access to good and safe care as they plan to attend one of our 3 public universities for the upcoming fall semester. Both in my professional capacity and as a parent whose daughter will be attending college in fall 2024, I can attest to the resonance of this issue for learners and their families. As many of you know, the Chronicle of Higher Education and Inside Higher Education have carried multiple articles outlining how this issue reverberates across institutions of higher learning within the US. Thank you once again for this opportunity to raise this issue with all of you, and I hope the rest of your stay in Flagstaff is pleasant and productive. Thank you.
Michael Rulon, followed by Francis Reimer.
Chair Manson, Regents, thank you so much for joining us here today and for giving us an opportunity to address you. My name is Michael Rulon. I am an associate teaching professor of French and world cinema in the Department of Global Languages and Cultures. I have also served as a faculty senator, a member of the Diversity Curriculum Committee, and so many other committees that it would take my full 3 minutes to list them all. And I am also here to talk to you about the issue of sexual and reproductive health. This is also an important diversity and equity issue for our universities. As we know, sexual and reproductive health issues largely impact women, people of color, people of low social economic status, which describes a large number of the students here at NAU, and all 3 of our universities are Hispanic serving institutions. And therefore, it really is essential for our students' well-being that they have access not only to quality sexual and reproductive health care, but access to accurate and legal information. And I know we're in an area of uncertainty in the wake of the Dobbs decision, and as the states are all figuring out how to handle this Supreme Court decision. It's also important to note that the faculty who are impacted and the staff who are impacted by this decision are largely members of underrepresented communities. The students who come to talk to their professors typically come to talk to non-tenured professors who teach lower division classes, women, people of color, members of the LGBTQIA community. And therefore, I am asking, as my esteemed colleagues have done, to give us guidance on how we can assist our students within the bounds of the law. And I am also going to add my voice to those calling for a tri-university task force to examine this issue and to help us better serve our students so that they can succeed in our universities. Thank you so much for your time.
Francis Reimer, followed by Kyle Nitsudia.
Greetings, members of the Board of Regents. My name's Dr. Frances Julia Reamer, and I've been at NAU since 1998. Yes, I'm a full professor in educational foundations. I'm the past and currently the interim director of the Women's and Gender Studies program on campus. I've also served twice as the co-director of the Commission on the Status of Women. And so I'm here today to address my concerns about the healthcare of our female members being in sort of right in the middle of this. As you know, NAU's student population is 63.7%, nearly 2/3 women on and off a residential campus. Most of those women, as we know, are of reproductive age. Women's and Gender Studies offers a unique vantage on the health of female identified students. We offer coursework focusing on women health and sexuality, gender health and healing. WGS has worked alongside the Commission on the Status of Women and Campus Health in the development of lactation rooms on campus and for advocating for the Early Learning and Development Center. We're pleased with and proud of these projects, knowing that lack of childcare can keep women from making it to class, completing assignments on time, and generally succeeding academically. We also know that access to contraceptives and reproductive health care leads to improved educational and economic outcomes for women. So when Roe v. Wade was overturned last year, we were concerned about the impact on our students. And during this past year, we found that many of our students are panicked and some of them are petrified. A year after the Dobbs decision, we're concerned about whether students are able to access the services and care they need. We're also concerned about the predicted decline in enrollment sparked by students' choices around access to healthcare on campus. The Brookings Institution predicted that post-Roe, colleges will experience reduced women's enrollment, reductions in out-of-state enrollment in anti-abortion states, shifts in faculty location, and changes in on-campus health services. Women from historically marginalized communities are particularly impacted. And as a Hispanic serving institution and a university that supports first-generation college students, these changes are of real concern here at NAU. Given recent court decisions and legislative actions, it's incumbent upon us to address health concerns. The formation of a tri-university task force to review and propose health policies and practices that support our students is a smart strategy. When we promote reproductive health and reproductive justice, we advance educational equity and increase our students' chances of reaching graduation. Thank you.
Kyle Netsuria, followed by Sarah Gauthier.
Hi, good afternoon, Chair, Regents. Thank you so much for your time. I'm reading today for one of our students, Jasmine Vahey. She can't be here today. She's a very recent ASU graduate from the Online Justice Studies program at the School of Social Transformation. She really appreciated her time at ASU and loved the ability to be able to take online courses. She's a single mom here in our rural community, and she can't be here today because of her degree, she just got a new job, and she's working as a crisis advocate at one of our local agencies here in Flagstaff. She really wanted to give some background today on reproductive health access here in Flagstaff. Currently, there are no abortion services offered anywhere in Northern Arizona. Medication abortions were suspended at the Flagstaff Planned Parenthood Clinic when the Dobbs decision and subsequent territorial ban went into effect, and no surgical abortions have been offered in decades here in Flagstaff, or here at the Planned Parenthood. Unfortunately, there are no plans to reinstate services at the Planned Parenthood Flagstaff anytime soon. And right now, the only in-state abortion providers are in Phoenix and Tucson, which necessitate overnight stays for the 2 in-person clinic appointments required by the state, at least 24 hours apart. And right now, these appointments are backed up for weeks and months, requiring pregnant people to travel out of state for safe and legal health care. I don't want to repeat some stuff that you've heard today. We know about how restrictive the current Arizona state laws are, and we know that the regents are restricting what we can do here at the university, but we really support educating our students. Jasmine's greatest fear for our students is that without sound medical care and advice, many will withdraw from their academic programs without ever disclosing the way healthcare restrictions affect their academic success. Jasmine asks, and we ask, that the Arizona Board of Regents to please support any efforts to ensure that students, faculty, and staff in Flagstaff and our greater Northern Arizona communities are informed and supported in making serious healthcare choices. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon.
Sarah Gothier, followed by Leslie Hansen.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Regents. My name is Sarah Gauthier, and I would like to talk about the issues facing students with housing insecurity, specifically in Northern Arizona. There are already barriers to accessing higher education with heavy tuition rates or restrictions to admissions to universities, but once students get on campus, they face the issue of finding housing. There is on-campus housing available, but once they have that, they have to pay heavy costs on top of their already expensive tuition. And one issue that faces students is the chunks of housing costs that are faced on them at one time. Unlike tuition, you cannot put housing on payment plans at many universities, forcing students to pay thousands of dollars at once that they oftentimes cannot afford. So many students have to seek off-campus housing, but there's a lack of housing available in the areas surrounding universities that is within student budgets. This creates a heavy burden on students to find affordable housing and often leads to them having to commute long times, which is another burden on finding transportation that is both reliable and consistent for students. When students have this boundary placed on them, it not only hinders their ability to perform in their education, but it stops students who might be able to come to university from attending at all. Looking into increasing housing availability or lowering the cost of on-campus housing and ensuring that all students who need housing on campus have it available to them can help reduce the burdens placed on students and create a more accessible education within the state of Arizona. Thank you.
Leslie Hansen, followed by Julianne Bernhardt.
Hello, my name is Leslie Hansen, and I'm here on behalf of the Arizona Students Association. I am an NAU student, a queer rights activist, and a dedicated member of the Flagstaff community. I'm also transgender. I cannot get pregnant like many women can. In a way, the fight for reproductive justice does not directly affect me. At the same time, it does. Bodily autonomy is a right that every single person on this planet should have. As someone who relies on life-saving hormone replacement therapy, I am deeply entrenched in the battle for these rights. Even if you think you're not affected by these issues, you are. Every person should have the ability to access quality medical care, which includes healthy and safe reproductive care, which both Flagstaff and NAU as a whole are lacking. We do not want to create a culture of apathy when it comes to the health and well-being of our students and community. If we as a city, university, and community are relying solely on a single abortion provider that comes up every 2 weeks, our collective health is in jeopardy. Please do what you can to address this issue that puts countless lives at risk, including the lives of the students here in Flagstaff and even across the state. Thank you.
Julianne Bernhardt, followed by Haley Creighton.
Perfect. Oh, can everyone hear me? Perfect. All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for taking the time to hear us all today. My name is Julian Bernhardt. My pronouns are he, they, she, in whatever order. I'm a Flagstaff citizen and an individual passionate about care for my community. And as an active civic member of Flagstaff and the current Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for our NAU student government, I want to talk to you today about concerns about access to sexual health education, resources, and communication within this region of the state. Today, I speak to you about the growing health concerns shared by my NAU community, and that is echoed by my peers at U of A and ASU respectively, and ask that a conversation begin on how we can best serve this great state and its students. Reproductive and sexual health and the resources that are provided is something that collectively the three universities, their student governments, faculty, and staff have resonated with and have asked for change amidst growing concerns about the sexual assault crisis on our college campuses and an abstinence-only education in our K-12 system. What I have seen on my campus and within the university systems is that resources are available, but not accessible. Education is lacking as Arizona remains 47th in the nation for comprehensive sexual health education. And that's really, really hard. Sexual health is treated as a taboo subject. What this creates is an environment in which students arriving at our great universities cannot achieve the education they deserve when issues surrounding their health conflict with their lives. NAU's student demographic is 65% women and female identifying students. We are a residential campus, and many students arrive here without a family-based or regular medical center, which is supplemented by campus health services, which has already been so astounding, but could always use more work. Oh, give me 1 second. As a victim of sexual assault myself, I ask that we engage in conversations about this and consider what options are available. As perfected and maintained in 36 colleges nationwide, we should engage in beginning the conversation about making emergency contraception more widely available via Plan B vending machines on our campuses. This is something I myself have begun drafting for our student government. I ask that we look into making STI screening as accessible as possible and assess how we can incorporate testing into our education center. Recognizing that STI testing is provided at NAU, it has been normalized as part of ensuring good health and encouraging safe sex practices on campus. I want to share that I am not advocating for abortion on campus, as this is not legal under statute 15-1630 or 1630. What I am asking for is increasing our resources and efforts to use what we have around us and make for a more aware student body. We welcome students here from Alaska, California, and Hawaii. Let us show them what this great state has to offer, and we should welcome every situation with pride and commitment for caring for Arizona. Thank you so much.
Haley Creighton, followed by Becky Daggett.
Hello, thank you, Chair and fellow regents. My name is Haley Creighton. I am the Northern Regional Director for the Arizona Students Association. We are a nonprofit, nonpartisan group that advocates for student issues, develops student leaders, and mobilizes students to take action against legislation that targets their best interest. I'm here today to share a number of issues that ASA and the students we represent want to bring to your attention. Firstly, we want to work directly with ABOR in order to lower the burden of higher education costs that fall largely on our students. To do this, we will lobby state legislators to make higher education a larger portion of the 2025 state budget. We are committed to increasing the amount of state funding per student from its current $110 to $1,100 and ask that ABOR members join us to lobby the state legislature in person in 2024. In the event that higher education funding increases, we ask that the board freeze tuition for all students. Next, we are concerned about a lack of access to reproductive health care, especially for our Flagstaff students who must rely on an abortion provider coming up from Phoenix only twice a month for mandatory initial appointments. Students have also expressed that there is a limited access to resources like Plan B on campus. With many students coming to our universities from states like California that have much easier access to this type of care, we want to address this as an issue that may deter many students from choosing wonderful universities like NAU. We also ask the Board of Regents to take more action on sexual assault in conjunction with our work with Sun Devils Against Sexual Assault. We ask that the board push our universities to meet the demands of more victim advocates, a survivor fund, and more prevention staff to make our campuses safe for all students. Next, while there are student resources for the housing and food insecurity crises happening on our campuses, these resources are often difficult to find. We urge the board to use financial incentives for university presidents in order to centralize resources and increase funding to student resource centers. Finally, we ask the board to consider the following measures to make their meetings and other proceedings more accessible to students. We want our students to stay involved, but we need your help to make that happen. Please make your meeting agendas, locations, and times available to the public at least 10 days in advance and avoid changing them if possible so students may plan accordingly. We also ask that you standardize and publicize the process for signing up to speak during the public session, provide more time for statements from the public, and ensure online access for public comment is available for all public meetings. Myself and my colleagues would like to schedule a meeting with each regent at their earliest convenience to discuss all of these concerns. We have previously reached out and only received a response from student Regent Canier. We thank her for the work she has done and wish her the best of luck in the future. ASA wants nothing more than to work with the Board of Regents to address issues that affect students all across this state. We hope these meetings become more accessible so that the voices of students can not only be heard, but also listened to. Thank you so much.
Our final speaker, Becky Daggett.
Thank you. I figured while I'm here, the city of Flagstaff very much values our strong relationship with NAU, and Flagstaff experiences countless benefits from having NAU in our community. I count students as residents regardless of their length of stay, and I'm concerned about their well-being. Recently, the Flagstaff City Council passed a resolution in support of reproductive health care for our residents. As you probably know, we also declared a housing emergency, and this is also a problem that impacts our students. So Flagstaff stands in partnership with you in advocating for more resources to address our housing crisis and in supporting students in accessing reproductive health care and information. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Manson.
Thank you, everyone, for your comments. The next item on the board agenda is the approval of the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda include items 12 through 34. Does anybody have a conflict to declare with those items? Seeing none, I move that the board approve items 12 through 34 as listed on the consent agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion does carry. Next, we have the Executive Director Arnold report to the board. Any questions? Floor is yours, John.
Thank you, Regent Manson. Thank you for our community and your comments. Appreciate it. I am always excited and thrilled to do my annual update to the board. It's something I look forward to, and I know the staff looks forward to all year long. So thank you for accommodating us to spend a few minutes with you this morning. But before we get into that, if I can take just a moment of personal privilege. When today we'll appropriately celebrate the conclusion of your term, Madam Chair. But there is another officer on our board who's also ending his term as our prior past chair that I would like to thank him for his service. We have our leadership arrangement on the board involves the chair-elect, the chair, and the prior past chair. And the burden of work that falls on those three regents is significant. And I think Regent Penley has now been in one of those roles for the last 5 years, which would be the majority of a normal term. But since he's serving back-to-back terms on the board, so he'll be a regent for just over 10 years, I think, when we're done. But to spend, half his time in one of those roles, I just can't thank him enough for the time, the energy, and the effort, and the guidance and the mentorship that he has put into that time. I think at the end you will be in one of those roles for almost 5 years, which is really just above and beyond the normal call to serve. So thank you very much, Regent Penley. I appreciate it.
Yes, I would like to second that very briefly. Larry has been a huge boon to this board, just with his experience, his calm demeanor, and he is the one of us who actually has functioned and worked in a university environment. So there's a special sort of knowledge that he brings to us, which is incredibly valuable. So, and you've been a great colleague.
I've met nearly weekly with Regent Penley for the last 5 years. So I'm nearly weekly, and so I'm gonna miss that very much. Moving on.
Good, excellent. All I could see was myself there for a second, so I appreciate that coming up. One of my favorite slides of the year is looking back. What did we do last year? When I gave this presentation last year, I had what are we going to do next year? And so that's the list we had that's there on the left. So number one, only on board one new regent. The prior year we did 5. And so I'm very, very happy to say we only did one new regent, Regent Reese, this last year. And so thank you for not resigning. I really appreciate that very much. Tuition reform, successfully moved that forward into what I believe is one of the most transparent and predictable reforms and structures in the country. Our health sciences rollout, which we're only 2/3 of the way through, so of NAU to go, and lots more to come on that front over the upcoming year. But a very exciting turn for the board. We transitioned with a new governor, TRIF 3.0, which involved, we approved our first community grants this year. We'll hear a little bit more about that later today. We also launched a new communication structure around TRIF, trying to help our citizenry understand how important that source of funds is for the university and for the state. FAFSA improvements. So just over a year and a half ago, the board took on FAFSA as the lead agency in the state on that front. Turns out FAFSA is really hard. Trying to improve that, but I am happy to say that we're up 5% year over year, which ranks Arizona 11th in the United States in terms of improvement. Unfortunately, we're still 14 points below the national average in FAFSA completion. So a long, long way to go, but proud of the work we've done so far, and we'll continue to push on that front. Online metrics successfully implemented, NAU metrics successfully implemented, attainment next steps. We've made a couple of key hires in that area, and we'll continue to work with the universities and our team and a slew of other partners on how to continue to grow college going rate in the state. And then general education assessments, we successfully implemented the first of those. We'll continue to work on expanding and improving those assessments. And then we did a bunch of other random things that just came up after we planned. We completed a board restructure, which will go into effect on July 1st. Arizona Promise Program alignment. I think you'll be very pleased with the reports we come back on that front. We did coaching contracts reform, completed a 5-year cost study, prepared for the UAGC acquisition, which we will finalize today, and hopefully in 15 working days, we'll bring that to a close. Biosciences Core, we hired a new executive director for the Biosciences Core, did some rebranding around that. You'll hear from her a little bit later today. We celebrated President Crow's 20th anniversary as president of ASU, which was a significant event for staff, much more significant accomplishment for the president. And I was grateful for AAU for also recognizing President Crow's 20th anniversary and the gift that they gave you this year.
Oh, yes, I'm sure it was a gift. Exactly what.
Congratulations once again, President. We ended legal conflicts with the Attorney General's office, which is what Jenny said is the euphemism I had to use to say we won the Omni case and finally have put those many years of pain and anguish behind us. We also launched 2 new scholarship programs this year that are run out of the board's office that were given to us by the legislature. And then we've worked, identified, and will be adopting later today efficiency metrics. So that begin to see the work that we accomplished over this last year. I think a productive and successful year. So you've all seen some changing tone a lot. You've all seen this slide. This is per capita investment in higher education. Arizona, which is the orange line, copper line, I think is the official color, the copper line versus national average. Back in 2008, when the state was rich and we were happy, we were at 80% of the national average, not great. Since then, we've fallen up into the upper 40s. Last year, we were at 56%. I expect in 2024 that will fall back down towards 50% of the national average, which is where we've been. So a few weeks ago, President Crow texted me. He said, "John, you would know better than most. Why doesn't the state fund higher education?" I'm paraphrasing a little bit. I did not respond to President Crow, which is my normal response.
And I continue to send.
Yeah. But I did not ignore President Crow. I've thought about that question a lot, and would like to spend the balance of my time doing a little bit of a level set with the board, and trying to get to some of that question. It is an incredibly complicated question, and one that would probably take a couple of days to really explore. We're going to try to do that in about 15 minutes. By delving into some state budget history. I've done presentations that were more than 2 hours on this topic. And so again, let me caveat by saying what we're going to go through is an oversimplification of the issues that are in front of us, but hopefully will be instructive as we consider what are our opportunities as a system and what strategic decisions we should make around those opportunities. That is, oh, yes, that is the next slide. So this is higher education funding from the state of Arizona, general fund appropriations over the last 8 years. If we use 2016 as a base year, and we'll get into it, I'll explain why I chose that. Since 2016, total appropriations are up $387 million, or almost 60%. It's an annual growth rate of 7.3%. A lot of that money came in the last couple of years, in 22 and 23 specifically, where we had NEI money, we got some operating money, we had money for Promise, we got money for ATA. The other major investment the state gave us was back in 2019, when we got the research infrastructure multi-year appropriation. A lot of people would look at that and say, you've done pretty good, 7.3% over the last 8 years, up 60% overall. What's the issue? But we all know there's a much larger story here. But I do believe that there is a recency bias in current state leadership that looks at this and say, we've done our job. And that is one of the things we are battling. So this is a history of the state's general fund. The black line is general fund expenditures. What I tried to do is index benchmark general fund expenditures against the state's economy. Where should the general fund be? Where should expenditure levels be? And I tried various indices, worked with a state economist, and chose prior year GDP growth, state GDP growth, to predict what general fund expenditures would be. How much did GDP grow the prior year, and should general fund chase that? Used 1997 as my base year, and then grew projected benchmarked general fund based on that index. We all follow? Good. And it produced that copper line. So you can see through 2008, pretty good alignment between how our economy grew and how the general fund grew. Really since 2016, pretty decent alignment on how the general fund grew versus how the state's economy grew. What we have in the middle there, 2008 to 2016, are the after effects of the Great Recession. That period there, and you can't see it on the giant screen. That period there, I shaded it out, should have shaded it a little darker so you can see that, because every single year between 2008 and 2016, the state experienced a budget deficit. I was the state budget director for most of that period, and can provide some insight into the thinking on how we were making budget decisions over that period. While we were in that period, we began to think about the budget in a couple of different ways. Originally, how I thought about it, and we talked about it, is what are the core functions of the state that we need to protect as we go into deficit spending? And let me back up just a second. I don't think current lawmakers, current public really remember how bad the Great Recession was and the impacts on the state general fund. I don't know that other than some of us that were deep inside of it really understood ever how bad it really was. So as we went into that, we started thinking, what are the core responsibilities of the state? And how do we protect that? And things outside that core had to go. We got through that. And then we began to think about it. What are expenditures of the state that are defensive? In other words, that are designed to prevent bad things from happening versus offensive that are designed to try to make life better. And really the expenditures that were around trying to make life better had to go. We spent our time trying to prevent bad things from happening. And that's really how we began to think about it. And despite that, a lot of bad things happened over that period. And just to give you some examples, between 2008 and 2016, 19,000 families lost cash assistance support. Childcare enrollments, childcare supported by the state, dropped by 24,000 children. Enrollment in the kids care program dropped by approximately 60,000 children. We essentially eliminated it as health insurance for low-income children. Medicaid enrollments for childless adults dropped by 140,000 members. Approximately 25,000 individuals suffering from serious mental illness lost state-supported benefits. Over that same time period, out-of-home care for at-risk children grew almost 100%. Just under 10,000 children to just over 19,000 children were in out-of-home care, where essentially the state came in and removed the child. Terrible, terrible time period for the state, and one that I would argue we have not fully recovered from. So you'll note at the end of this chart, well, we'll get into that. Moving on. Somehow that screen has turned again. Oh, thank you. How you did that. So where did we end up in 2016? Overall, the state budget dropped by about $1 billion, about 9%. K-12 education was down 11% over that period.
Just a question, John, just for clarification. The state budget dropped also because there was a decline in the economy or a change in revenues as a function of tax policy?
So during this period, there was almost no tax policy changes. There were some tax cuts that were passed that were implemented into the future. But to put it in perspective, between 2008 and 2010, so a 2-year period, state revenues dropped from $10 billion to $6.5 billion. When we went into fiscal 10, we were facing about a $3.5 billion budget deficit on a $10 billion budget. And we'll get into tax law here in a little bit. Corrections up 13% over that period. Again, trying to stop bad things from happening. Universities down 41%. DS, child safety, and we talked about that rise in out-of-home care, up 4%, and everything else was down about 8%. Over this same period, the medication population, despite the freezes and other things, grew by 741,000 members, or 66.5%. A lot of that was Medicaid expansion and Obamacare coming into impact. So you'll note we grew that population that size, and yet expenditures were down. That was through 2 reasons. One, we squozed the providers, and they would probably all tell you that they were responsible for all those cuts. But the real reason is we were able to shift much of that expenditure onto the federal government and to an assessment that we levied on hospitals. Over the same period where universities were cut 41%, university populations grew by 33%. So you can compound that cut, the impacts of that cut, by the population growth. On terms of federal funds, Federal funds expended by the state grew by 52% over this period, becoming a larger source of funds than the general fund. By 2016, for every dollar that the general fund was spending, the state was spending $1.30 in federal funds. Think about that shift. 2016. Moving on. So then just take a pause out of where we're at. The problem with budget math, and I have tried to explain this to people over and over and over and over, and most people struggle. So I tried to come up with a very simple example. If you have $100 and you reduce it by $50, that is a 50% cut. You have $50, you can go to $100, that is a 100% increase. So the universities were reduced by 41%, but it's a 70% increase to get us back to where we were in 2008.
Assuming we had the same number of students.
Oh, and that's not even bringing in, changes in population. For a lawmaker, a 70% increase in a budget seems ginormous. But again, this recency bias is something that I think we're really struggling with. So what happened between 2016 and 2024? Because the economy took off, revenues came in. The budget grew by $8.6 billion or 94%. Again, over that time period, universities are up 59%. K-12 education's up 100%. DHS and access, they're up 48%. That's some provider rate restoration, but largely just formula growth. Corrections is up 45%. That's a massive healthcare problem that you've probably read about in the paper. They also did some payroll increases over that period. Employee pay, DES, child safety is up 107%. That is largely our DDD, our developmentally disabled population, and what they've had to take on there. And then everything else is up 225%. But then you look at that versus 2008. Overall budget's up 77%. Universities are still down 6% since 2008. And the other phenomenon on this, university share of the general fund has just been decimated. In 2008, the universities were 11% of the general fund. In 2024, we're 5.9% of the total general fund expenditures. That change in share is worth about $930 million. Some other things that happened between those two periods. Once again, federal funding grew by 141%. So general fund was up 90-something%. Federal funds up 141. For every general fund dollar spent, now the state now spends $1.61 in federal funds. A lot of that is COVID funding that came into the state. So will be interesting as that washes out to see where we go. And the other very interesting thing that happened over this period is the rise of quote unquote one-time expenditures. Back during the Great Recession, we were looking for budget tools. So you can kind of blame me for this. We were looking for budget tools to help the state avoid the kind of financial collapse that we experienced over that period. And one of the tools we came up with was to implement a 3-year budgeting cycle. We'd do the current year, the next year, and the year after that. What are the impacts? We wanted the legislature to understand that when they made it at a programmatic appropriation in year 1, that there were going to be impacts in the out years. The side effect of that, and perhaps the main effect of that, is the rise in one-time budgeting. So because they have to live with the reality that expenditure here is going to have impacts in the out years, what they've decided to do is just call expenditures, well, they're only one time. And then the expectation is they won't be made in the next year, regardless of the nature of that expenditure. So I'll give you an example. This year, there are one-time expenditures to deal with healthcare costs in the corrections. I don't know anybody believes that those are one-time expenditures, but that's how they were scored in the budget. There's $300 million in one-time expenditures that went in for operations into the K-12 system. once again, I'm not sure how they can possibly be one-time expenditures. In our own universities, we got $20 million in one-time promise money. Students come for more than 1 year. So I don't know how that's reasonable to think about it that way, but we've seen this massive rise in that quote unquote tool. So where did the money really go between 2016 and 2024? Where do we spend this $8.6 billion? Who did we lose to, I guess, is the question. I divided those expenditures up into two pots: mandatory and discretionary. Mandatory expenditures are expenditures required by the federal government or by voter protected statutes. So these are caseload growth and inflation growth requirements in Medicaid and K-12, and expenditures in the correction system I put in mandatory. That little one time there is that health care costs in our correction system. Sure. And then discretionary funds is everything else. So let's look at discretionary, because that's who we were really competing against. And you can see of the $5.5 billion spent in discretionary, 2.2 billion of that went to the K-12 system. You know, and you look at the political pressure that came around the K-12 system, that $2 billion, that's about half of that is teacher raises. The other half is called the district additional assistance. It's really a soft capital fund. You know, 50,000 teachers showed up at the state capitol, and that community passed 2 initiatives at the state ballot box. Both of those were struck down, but the political pressure that passing something at the ballot, you know, led to those expenditures. Quote unquote, I labeled it infrastructure. That is a euphemism for pork projects. Quite literally, you can go through the list. There's some of that money will go for real projects, you know, freeway expansion and others that are buried in there. But a lot of those expenditures are community expenditures that legislators took home as local pork. And that's just what it was. There we are, universities, $388 million, tax offsets. So this is largely property tax offsets that the state runs through the K-12 budget. We're $360 million that was really gone away. Welfare, that's again in DES and in access. Public safety, that's our DPS and really the border stuff that we funded, and then everything else. And the bulk of the expenditures in all other are payroll increases that the state gave to their employees. So that was the expenditure side. There was a revenue reduction side. The state gave about $3 billion in tax cuts that were either tax cut reductions or impacts from those tax cuts. And let me explain. We'd have a revenue sharing agreement with the municipalities. And so when we cut income taxes to keep the municipalities whole, we agreed to give them more of the general fund. So we went up, revenue sharing was at 15%. Now it's 18%. That's the green on top of there. The little black one is a tax rebate that we're giving in 2024. So one time. As we move into 2025, and that's why the fiscal 24 budget is a little bit of a mirage. All of that black is expected to come out. All of those expenditures go away in 2025. So who did we lose to? We lost to mandated spending. We lost to K-12. We lost to quote unquote structure, and we lost to tax cuts. So a quick look at 2025 estimates. And again, all of that black is expected to come out, including about $74 million in university funding. So under current estimates, the ending balance in 2024 is projected to be $6 million. You will note the beginning balance in 2024 was $2.5 billion. Good God. So 2025 starts with $6 billion beginning balance, a $70 million ending balance, and a reduction in expenditures of about $1.5 billion, including an assumed reduction at universities of $74 million. It assumes the $50 million in corrections healthcare goes away. It assumes the $300 million in K-12 operating goes away. Now there is some, I don't agree with these estimates. I'm not endorsing these estimates. The revenue growth behind them is really conservative. 2023 revenue growth is projected at 8.8%. It looks like it's going to come in less than that. But 2024, they built it on an assumption of 2.1%. They're effectively building in a recession into 2024. On 3.6% in 2025. Each point of revenue growth is worth about $160 million. So if we see additional revenue growth there may be some money available. And then also in 2026, so there's another year out there, the 3-year budgeting I mentioned before. They are assuming Prop 123 will go away. This was the proposition that the Ducey administration passed that increased distributions from the state land trust. It's currently worth about 280, I think the number's on $283 million that goes to the K-12 system. We get a little bit of money out of that. But again, if that is extended, potentially some more money in the budget. But it's looking out at 25 because 24 is a little bit of a mirage. Where does that leave us versus our benchmark? It leaves us about $4 billion behind where if we follow the historical norm of general fund spending, where would the state be spending versus our economy? And we're about $4 billion below that, which is still required the state to limit its expenditures to core, quote unquote, defensive items. Now, what I would argue is that higher education is no longer an offensive, non-core expenditure. It has become a defensive investment. Back in 2010, 16% of our jobs in our state required a 4-year degree as a minimum education requirement. Today, we're at 26% and headed towards 30%. Jim Rounds, a well-known economist in the state, calculated that every single year we're 26,000 degrees short. That our economy is demanding 68,000 degrees per year just to meet the current economic levels of the state. And we're 26,000 degrees short off that number every single year. If we can't change that trajectory, bad things are going to happen to the state. How we convince the state of that is one of the key issues that we face. Madam Chair, with that's the end of my update. Sorry.
Such a rosy picture.
Let's all go home.
Yeah, it's so to get back to the question, there are other priorities, but in many ways, the state, because of the Great Recession and the retrenching that happened during the Great Recession, we were just spending way less as a function of the economy than we were before the Great Recession. Now, I know, the state has shifted things off onto other funds and federal funds, but things have shifted onto the state over that period. I think there's a little bit of a wash there, but Arizona is just a much more complicated and complex environment than we were in the early 2000s that I think we can all attest to, and we just haven't kept up.
Does anybody have any comments or questions for John? All right, well, I guess we have our job in front of us in terms of talking to the legislature and trying to help them understand the necessity for what we do and the importance to the economy. So with that,
I couldn't get all of that into a text back to President. That was okay.
So we are now with that presentation. You did not mention the TRIF funding.
Well, is that on the same agenda item?
It was.
Okay, then let's do it.
Okay.
So, Madam Chair, every year, so we have TRIP dollars. We distribute those TRIP dollars out to the universities. There's baseline distributions. And the growth in TRIP is set aside for what we call Regent Opportunity Grants. This year, we have about $30 million in TRIP growth that we have not allocated yet. We're hopeful. We haven't closed out the fiscal year yet. We think we'll see a little bit more money come in that the regions will have a chance to allocate next fall. But what staff is proposing is that the board allocate $30 million in opportunity grants to the 3 universities to be used to support the AZ. I never get it right. Healthy Tomorrow AZ initiative.
Right. Healthier tomorrow.
So
Perfect.
there.
Thank you. So are there any comments or questions regarding the TRIF allocation? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to move that the board allocate over the course of fiscal year 2024, $30 million in technology and research innovative initiative opportunity fund revenues collected in fiscal year 2023 to the universities to address Arizona's long-term healthcare needs and authorize the board chair to direct amounts of the fund allocations. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion does carry. Thank you. So our next item, I am going to turn the floor over again to Executive Director Arnold. And this is our presentation regarding the Phoenix Bioscience Core.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. Regents, it is my pleasure to introduce Scarlett Spring, the new Executive Director of the Phoenix Biosciences Core. Scarlett, come on up. Scarlett brings a wealth of bioscience expertise and leadership to the PBC. She has more than 20 years of experience with pharmaceutical giants such as Merck and AstraZeneca, as well as industry leaders in oncology, diagnostics, and personalized care. Ms. Spring is an active in the community as well, serving as a board director for Republic Bank of Arizona and is a member of the Arizona Biosciences Roadmap Steering Committee. Ms. Spring is an outstanding leader. We are excited to have her at PBC. She's started in a part-time capacity around the first of the year and is now coming on full-time as our director. And she's going to provide you an update on all things PBC. I really wanted the board to have an opportunity to meet Scarlett, get a sense of her, ask questions about where we're headed, and then you'll know where to go when you have complaints. So that's Scarlett.
That's not how we go first.
That's okay. Thank you, John. Thank you, Board of Regents, very much for some time. And how much do I have? 10 minutes?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, very good.
10 minutes.
So I put together just a couple of slides, but one of the things that I wanted to just begin with is that most innovation clusters are either rejuvenations or of areas that are experienced regentrification, whether that's warehouse districts or people have kind of designated areas of open and vacant land, and you kind of start from scratch there. We have such an amazing opportunity because the Phoenix Bioscience Core is actually located in the thriving city of the 5th largest, the fastest growing county that's in the country. And on that PBC, as you well know, we have all 3 of our universities located: a bioscience high school, a K through 12 ASU prep, as well as Maricopa Community College actually has a site that's on the PBC. In addition, we have industry partners like Exact Sciences, TGen, the City of Hope, Dignity Health's Cancer Center, just to name a few. So where we're starting from is so much more exciting. And not only is that kind of what we're looking to build upon, but to also look beyond the PBC, because while it is the 30 acres that have been designated, and we will certainly begin to fill those, it reaches beyond those borders, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So if I can have a first slide, please.
Scarlett, what exactly does Exact Sciences measure?
How do they what?
What do they measure?
What do they measure?
No, I know. It's
Yes.
it's a It's a new system.
Well, their Cologuard test is important,
I
right?
understand.
That's true. And with that, if we don't have, I'll just move forward and say what we've also done over the first 5 months is talk a bit about, listen a lot to each one of our constituents and come together with 5 pillars that we believe will be our strategic plan. And the first of that being a world life science cluster. So the first thing for us to do is really understand what we do well. And we've engaged in some research, not only with our Wexford colleagues and doing some of our own interviews, but working with Flynn and Teconomy to understand what is it that we do well. So as we think about industry attraction strategies, we actually know who we're going to target that list. What we found early on is that around neuroscience, around behavior science, around kind of brain health, if you will, we already know that we have areas of competence there. The researchers that are on the PBC and the College of Medicine, as well as we now have the Human Behavior Decision-Making Team for ASU and the occupational group that is there for Northern Arizona. We're in the shadows of the Banner Alzheimer's Institute. And just talking yesterday with Dr. Eric Ryman, he really believes that we will have preventative Alzheimer's therapies in the next 5 to 7 years. Very, very exciting. We're also in the shadows of Barrows Neurological, one of the world-class brain and health clinical assets. And many of our researchers, which are there on the PBC, have their clinical offices that are stretched through the hospitals that are along our clinical corridor. Secondly, our second pillar is exactly what you all are talking about. And we train and advance the next generation of students, leaders, physicians, nurses, and occupational and physical therapists on our campus. So thank you for the Healthy Tomorrow initiative. And we look forward to working with you to see how the PBC can be helpful there. But one of the things that, as I've done my discussions and interview, is clinical rotations continue to be almost every college that I talk to. So whether it's our NAU and occupational and PT, or whether it's the College of Medicine or our nursing programs, all of them are seeking clinical rotations. And while that's really not our offices to necessarily solve that, to bring the individuals together and to begin to work on those kinds of issues is what our office also does. Our third initiative is around economic development and entrepreneurship. Part of the Jim Round's work that was done around the 2.5 to 1 investment in dollars that the PBC will return is about stimulating new companies. It was about economic development, and it's also about attracting corporate partners to not only Phoenix, but also to that campus. So one of our initiatives is also going to be working with our postdocs, as well as the faculty that's being recruited, because all of them have National Science Foundation grants, NIH grants, and helping them with their commercial strategies so that those grants are stronger. And many of them have company ideas that they have in their labs. So being able to support them is one of the things we want to do. Wexford there in 850 PBC. 850 PBC is the collaboration with ASU and Wexford. For the first time only, have built one of the floors. It's the 5th floor, and it's called Connect Labs. And that's where we actually have move-in space for entrepreneurs for plug and play. And we actually have ideas around how we're going to get some of our companies into that space so that they can grow as well. And then lastly, around economic development, entrepreneurship is certainly partnering with the GPECs, the ACAs, the City of Phoenix on finding those industry partners. Even Dr. Robbins was talking about how we can host symposiums of some of these top industry giants, whether it be medical device or whether it be pharmaceutical, to come and let them know what's happening here in the Phoenix area, in the Maricopa County, in the state of Arizona, that will bring their attention to what it is that we're doing. Our fourth pillar is around master planning. and branding. The PBC today has 1.7 million space, whether that's lab, office, academic, and research space. But at full build out, it will be 6 million. We need to be using that space wisely. And for the first time, we actually have City of Phoenix with all 3 universities represented at the table on the next generation master plan for the PBC. So that's extremely exciting. And the 5th is to make sure that we keep the PBC wrapped into what makes downtown Phoenix special. And that's that it is built among amazing restaurants, an artist community, a music community. We are home now, the PBC host on the weekends, the farmer's market. My gosh, yes, the farmer's market where there's 3,000 to 4,000 individuals that every Saturday come to the PBC. We've only begun to tap the opportunity of getting our students to be involved in wellness programs and health fairs because we have individuals that come onto our campus. And that's the way we want to continue to have the core be, is a place where we're not just building these buildings among these dynamic historical communities, we're inviting them in on a daily and weekly basis. So one of the things that we are very proud of is we have something called the Artists and Researchers. This is where we've paired a researcher with an artist, and together they worked upon a translational piece of art. If you've been through the Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport, you might have seen this art on display. It's been there since February, and it will be until the end of July. We will have our second cohort of that beginning in August, and it has been so successful that we are now looking to do that with a group of students. So not only are we having these expressions of their science through art, but we also know that that does help with burnout. It does help with placemaking, and that's something we feel very strongly about. So I've kind of talked about, you know, the core itself and how special it is, but just to reiterate that the PBC is porous. The PBC actually reaches down and includes the U of A nursing program that's now in Gilbert and the NAU nursing program that is now in North Phoenix. It reaches back to the Biodesign Institute that sits in the Tempe campus, as well as Mayo Clinic, which is now up in North Phoenix. Because we have the ability to be this porous core and to welcome the science, the education to the downtown Phoenix, and for us to extend out, it is very special for what we're doing, and we're extremely happy. 2 things that are that I just want to leave you with is we are excited about U of A's new CAMI building that's going to be coming on. That is the Center for Advanced Molecular and Immunology Therapies. And while I can't promise that it's going to look necessarily like the clouds and the marshmallows that have been put out there, what Dr. Robbins and Dr. Dake felt very strongly about is we wanted it to be inviting and we wanted it to be different. And it is now going through some of the renditions, and that work is going to be started this summer of what that building is actually going to be looking like. So we hope to get back with you in the latter part of the year on that. And then lastly, 843 PBC is the second project that ASU is working on. And that particular entity, we're looking to, we've got some renditions of that, and that's something that we're looking to learn much later in this year as well. But what it will be designed with is the community in mind, with hosting things like health fairs, and inviting that arts and that music community into the PBC. As I mentioned, we don't want to build big glass and steel buildings here in the heart of downtown in this historic community. We want to build it with them and to make sure that we're continuing to build a place that our researchers, that our students, and that companies want to come and plant their flag here in Arizona and specifically on the PBC. So I thank you all, and I look forward to working with you as we kind of turn the page around the initiative that you've given all of us, and that's to think bigger, to think differently. And we're trying to do that on the PBC because we have the ability to have all three of the universities. It's a place of collaboration and we look forward to it.
And their slides. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Really appreciate that. I think we're all looking forward to the new PBC. Are there questions or comments for Scarlett from the board or from staff?
Yeah, just a quick comment. It's as we roll out the health sciences initiative, AZ Healthy Tomorrow, there's certainly the workforce component of it, but there's also the economic and bioeconomy a component of that, and PBC and the development and the build out of that entity is really core to that strategy.
Yes, I'd like to ask, you said the artists and research group is going to start reaching out to students.
Yes.
Have you already developed your plan on how you are going to engage them?
So we actually have a standing committee. So it is our arts and research committee that meet routinely on this particular project. And that came from that particular team is let's now reach down and see how we can get a next generations of students on that. So we'll be doing that this fall.
Student president.
Okay. Thank you.
Regent Duval.
Quick question. Have we worked out with the city of Phoenix, our component of the bond issue, and as it relates to PBC and the universities, is that settled?
Well, I actually just had a meeting with the mayor yesterday, and I know that bond is coming up in the November timeframe. I think it's still loose at this point around what that $12 million is going to look like, but I think there is some commitment that it is certainly going to go towards some of the initiatives that have been laid out. And hopefully paired with some other dollars, because as we know, that's kind of seed funding, but it certainly gives us a leg up. And I think it demonstrates that if the community first goes out and votes, because that's the most important thing, but if indeed that the community feels strongly and votes in positive, that really speaks volumes about how it supports the sciences.
I'll just add that the focus is on ASU and it's a part of a larger comprehensive deal that we have with the city about our next project, which would be on the Phoenix Biomedical Campus.
Regent Mata.
Thank you. So what are the corporations coming, or their large business, mid or small businesses?
So one of the things that we're looking to do is stimulate the entrepreneurship. And as I mentioned, so those would be some of your smaller companies, but certainly emerging and exciting science. So part of that is going to be looking for that connect labs, is to make sure that we're getting some companies in there that have exciting science. But we'll also be targeting some larger groups as well. What I can say is that we're down the road with an anchor tenant to the PBC. We hope that we'll be able to announce something before the August timeframe. And that's something that we'll be very excited about. But that's the first of many. And that's what we're looking to do, is to make sure that we're letting industry know what's happening in that space.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Benson. Scarlett, as you noted, when we walked in together, you and I've known each other a long time. You bring to this position that you now hold deep experience in economic development, as well as your bioscience experience. That combination is quite special, and I think we're very fortunate to have you lead the Phoenix Bioscience Campus. Thank you for joining us.
And hopefully we can host you all there and actually you see what we're doing. Thank you.
I think we would enjoy that. Thank you very much. Thank you, Regent Penley, and thank you, Director. I'm looking forward to the future of PBC.
Thank you.
Next, Regent Herbold, as the Chair of the Audit Committee and the Vice Chair of the Finance, Capital and Resources Committee, would you please present items 4 through 7?
Great. Thank you, Chair Manson. The ABOR Audit Committee met on June 1 at ASU. The meeting opened with a status report on the implementation of the Audit Committee recommendations from the audit recommendations from the Auditor General for performance audits that were in the process as of our last Audit Committee meeting in June 2022. The audits were the ABOR sunset factors, university affiliated organizations, commercial real estate development, and IT security. In some cases, the implementation of the recommendations is complete, and we're waiting for the auditor to review and to sign off on our actions and close the audits. In other cases, policies and processes have been instituted. We're simply waiting for relevant transactions to arise that will give us the opportunity to demonstrate and document that we've implemented the auditor's recommendations. Then we can have the auditors perform their follow-up and close the audits. Next, we reviewed the written activity reports submitted by the university's internal audit review board chairs, as well as the chief audit executives, and received summary comments from each. In total, we reviewed 15 internal audit reports across the 3 universities. There were 2 red findings, red is bad, of course, at ASU, with recommendations that the topics of computer vulnerability and management. Additionally, there were 14 reviews of or audit report reviews received from external agencies for which no significant issues were identified. The university's chief audit executives presented their annual audit risk assessments and proposed fiscal year 2024 audit plans. The committee approved the audit plans. The committee received brief presentations on the enterprise risk management programs from each of the 3 universities. During the executive session, the universities provided more in-depth discussion regarding their respective risk profiles. Finally, we conducted reviews of assignments for each of the university's chief audit executives. Chair Manson, that concludes the audit committee report.
Thank you. And now I believe we have the items 4 through 7 from the Finance Committee.
Yeah, the Finance, Capital, and Resources Committee agenda includes item 4B through 7B. In addition, items 23 through 33, which were approved as part of the consent agenda earlier today. For item 4B, I will give a report on the Finance, Capital, and Resources Committee meeting that was held on June 1. At this meeting, the committee discussed the following items, which were already voted on as part of today's consent agenda. There were property transactions. The committee reviewed the University of Arizona request to sell property along the I-10 frontage road in Marana. And the committee also reviewed an ASU request to purchase the fashion design program property in Los Angeles, California. Concerning capital projects, the committee reviewed 3 individual construction projects and an amended annual capital plan for ASU and 1 individual construction project for University of Arizona. Concerning leases, the committee reviewed an ASU ground lease for new student housing on the Tempe campus. Concerning plan amendments, the committee reviewed 2 requests from the board office to amend voluntary 403B plan and the optional retirement plan. Also included on today's agenda is the consent agenda, I should say, is a second reading of the policy amendment for head coaches and intercollegiate athletic directors contracts that the committee first read at the March 23 committee meeting. At the June 1 meeting, the committee also discussed the component unit affiliate reports from each of the universities, as well as ASU's request to expand its fashion design program in Los Angeles. These items are for information only and don't need board approval. So with that, I will move to item 5, which is the annual budgets of ASU and AU and University of Arizona and ABOR. Item 5 is a review of the university budgets of fiscal year 2024. These budgets include general institutional information provided in their budget narrative, enrollment assumptions, revenue estimates, and planned strategic investments. We will have each university go over the proposed annual budget, and we will begin by inviting ASU to come first, followed by NAU and then University of Arizona. President Crow, if you would please provide your remarks.
Thank you, Regent Herbold. So while Executive Vice President Morgan Olson is coming up to the table, I'll just sort of set the stage by just refreshing contextually the financial structure of Arizona State University, which operates in a public enterprise modality. The vast majority of our resources are derived from transactional activities, research activities, tuition activities, gift activities, partnership activities, real estate activities, and so forth. And this is the way that we've been advancing. Today's presentation will flip back and forth because it's a nomenclature that's worth noting. This will concentrate on university activities as well as a little bit on enterprise activities, just to give you some sense of this. And it's just to contextually remind everybody how we're operating. The notion of an annual operating budget is, as all of you that have been executives in either government or private industry, it is an aspirational plan. It is what we hope to do. It's what we hope to achieve. It's what we hope to acquire. It's what we hope to be able to get in terms of resources or partnerships or so forth. It could be more, it could be less. And we make adjustments accordingly along the way. I'll also say that our financial position on which the budget is based is strong. And so I'll turn it over to Morgan for details and then deal with questions.
Yes, thank you, President Crow, members of the board. As President Crow said, the university's doing well overall, has a strong financial position, which provides a basis, for accomplishing the strategies that you spend a lot of time working through with President Crow. The budget is still a little bit unsettled, as was mentioned earlier, in the sense that the legislature has not finally adjourned yet. And so what this presentation is based on, and the materials in your binders, is the governor's executive recommendation. There likely will be some differences there, but I would say that in general, state investment appropriations for operations of the university for fiscal year 2024 will be slightly down to flat based on what we're seeing. And then if you include one-time capital funding that ASU had during the current fiscal year, which is going away, it'll be down probably in the neighborhood of $30 million. There also are some adjustments that are always done after the legislative session ends by the department administration related to group health insurance and some other things. So there probably will be some adjustments. A lot of the comparison information that I'll share with you in my comments are actually not from the fiscal year 23 budget, but our fiscal year 23 projections, because when you approved the budget for the current fiscal year, legislature wasn't done. So we did not know what our state investment would be. We've made adjustments for that. And so probably the best comparison, year over year would be to the 2023 projections. As you can see here, the budget projections for tuition are based upon the sticker price or rates that the board approved, 3% for residents and 5% for non-residents. We also are basing our pricing for digital immersion or online students at a 2% sticker price increase. Overall, we're anticipating about a 2.8% FTE student increase over this year's level, which we're pretty happy about. I can assure you the majority of institutions across the country would be pretty happy to be able to say something like that right now. So we continue to work hard at that. Our campus immersion students, those who study with us on one of our 4 campuses, we anticipate will increase by a little bit over 1% year over year. Online FTE growth is actually quite a bit stronger at almost 6%, and that's the foundation on which our tuition revenue estimates are based here. On the expense side, we are going to be making investments institutionally in financial aid for our students of over $730 million.
And
all told.
I'd like to make a comment relative to that because it's a nomenclature issue. People that refer to this as a discount rate, they have no understanding whatsoever about how we operate. This is not a discount rate. This is an expense. This is a choice on our part for our mission to invest in students to attend the university. This is not a foregone revenue. This is an expense of the institution, a cash payment of the institution. And this is really, really important. Our mission includes making certain that people are not left out for financial reason. Our mission includes making certain that the brightest minds from Arizona attend a public university in Arizona and have a higher probability of staying in Arizona. That requires an expenditure, not a discount. It's a scholarship to the student, but it's an expenditure to the institution. And this is really, really important. So this is a major, major category of expenditures for us to fulfill our mission.
As Dr. Crow said, when you look at the total budget expenditures there, you can kind of get a sense for the significant investment the university is making in accessibility and affordability for our students. I tell you also that we expect that number is projected to increase about 4% year over year. So what that means is that it is actually increasing at a faster rate than the sticker prices for our resident students, which we think is very helpful. And, this is part of a fairly complicated calculus involving our institutional economy, and we try to keep that in equilibrium as best that we can. Obviously, it's very important to continue to invest in our people, our human capital. And so there are increased expenditures in here to invest in our merit program. We believe at ASU in a pay for performance philosophy. And so this budget reflects that. Benefits expenses also will be increasing. We're able to keep employee contributions pretty stable again this year. And so that works out to about 32% on average of salaries and wages. It differs a little bit by type of employee. We are very careful to provide total compensation statements to everybody. I know I work with this on a fairly regular basis, but when I see that, I'm always favorably impressed, with the investment in total compensation that represents. We're also going to be making.
If you're a $60,000 a year employee, full-time employee at the university, and you have a family, you receive a $24,000 medical insurance benefit.
And of course, we have dependent tuition waiver benefits and those types of things. So all that is factored in, and it's part of our being an employer of choice strategy. I was going to mention that we're also making significant investments in high demand academic programs and student support activities, et cetera. There's a lot of detail in your materials on those, so I won't go over that. As the university's physical presence increases, of course, there are also increased costs for things like operation and maintenance of facilities, interest expense, on debt service, et cetera. So you'll see all of that reflected in our numbers as well. As President Crow indicated, a lot of these numbers that we're sharing with you over the last couple of years have been based on the ASU public enterprise approach. So at the top of the little graphic here, you see sort of the mission components of the university, our academic enterprise, teaching and learning, learning enterprise, which is intended to address learning, across the aging continuum. And then our knowledge enterprise, the development and dissemination of new knowledge. We have various entities that have been created as sort of special purpose tools to help support our mission. You see those at the bottom, ranging from Ed Plus at ASU to our ASU Preparatory Academy, et cetera. Those are all in accounting speak.
The bottom one also, which is in a
Sun Devil Athletics.
In a moment of reconstructive movement in this direction. So just to point that out.
So these are all part of the support mechanism of the ASU public enterprise. They are in accounting speak, affiliated entities or component units. And so a lot of the numbers you're seeing are the totality of the economic activity of this graphic. So here is a quick snapshot of where we think at an enterprise level, meaning university and affiliates, where we'll be. Our budget this year anticipated that we would have about a $214 million net increase in position. Our projections are slightly lower than that at about 193 million. Next year, that increases to about 271 million. Now, I want to hasten to mention a couple of things here. Our estimates for fiscal year 2024 are based on increase in public enterprise revenue of about 6% over the 2023 projected activity levels. Our expenditures will increase about 4.6% over FY 2023, yielding that projection. That does include a very important affiliate of the university, which is the ASU Foundation. So there are projections there about net return on endowment. And so if you were to separate and look only at the university, that increase in net position would be quite a bit less. It would be $79 million, and our assumptions assume about a 31% or $19 million increase in that net position from.
But if we were a private university, of course, we wouldn't even be offering the explanation. It would just be all a part of the same.
Correct.
Calculation.
All private universities would have that all integrated in the university's financials, as well as a very few public institutions. So our reason for doing it this way is to try to provide you with what we think is a clear picture of the overall economic activity of the enterprise.
And so, everyone, just for Regents' benefit, so going back one slide. So
sure.
2 points. We're nowhere near satisfied with that gold column and continuing to work on that, number one. And number two, that net margin position and that expenditure position doesn't reflect the investments that we're making at this, because they're not reported in the same speed. That is, we might be investing in Project X where we're committing dollars for the future. And so we're actually still looking for investments on our health initiatives. So don't think that this is the only source of those investments.
So just a couple of words about pricing strategy. This shows what we've been able to accomplish over roughly the last 10 years. Our change in our sticker prices, which remember is before application of student aid. Most of our students, including any student coming from a family with income of $65,000 or less, doesn't pay anything for tuition and fees. But the sticker prices over a 10-year period, including what's built in to this year's budget, there's an annual increase of about 1.9%. So less than the rate of inflation. We show you here in the table the higher education price index, which is a market basket of goods that college and universities tend to buy. It's the higher education version of the CPI for the individual household. That number would be a little lower than this 2.8%, but we're able to essentially manage, our pricing and our costs as a result of that in a way that maintains access and affordability.
This is a significant achievement on the part of the institution to be operating where we're increasing our tuition at a rate lower than the higher education price index itself. So our team has been working vigorously, and there's a number of tools, and I'll just mention that our technological assets are beginning to bear even more fruit in the day-to-day operations of the institution also.
So next slide is just a quick snapshot of enrollment and a variety of views of this. Our budget that you're looking at for next year operating budget is based on a total FTE student enrollment of about 131,000 students. That's FTE, not headcount.
Avoid confusion. So the numbers I use, 183,000, are total numbers of students. This is full-time equivalent students, as if they're fully enrolled in all things, and many of our online students are not.
And assuming full-time. So it also does not include a lot of the work that our learning enterprise unit is doing that isn't generating student credit hours, but maybe generating other forms of recognition,
which is in the hundreds of thousands of individuals.
So a couple of quick points here. Resident undergraduate immersion students. Resident undergraduates are on our campuses are the largest single share of our full-time equivalent enrollment, about 35%. If you look at FTE campus immersion students
just the region's
overall
concerns, I just want to make a point there. So the largest number of students on campus on resident campuses are undergraduates who are from Arizona. That's what you would hope, and that's what we have. So.
And in fact, our immersion or on-campus students are about 2/3 of that total enrollment pie that you're seeing there, with a third being our digital immersion or online students. But as I said earlier, that proportion is growing at a fairly fast rate. You know, people are essentially voting with their feet, or maybe in this case, their computers. And so those digital immersion students are primarily non-resident. Over 80% of our online students happen to be non-resident. So in a lot of ways, it increases the university's reach for students who are unable or choose not to come to one of our campuses in Arizona.
But to put that into scale, 16,000 of those online students are from Arizona. That's like a little mini university we were also able to set up with no capital costs.
So similar data over time here, about the last 8 years or so. You can kind of see how this breaks down by enrollment type. Since 2015, our overall FTE student enrollment has increased at a rate of about 5% annually. Again, a number we're pretty pleased about. Today, non-resident undergraduate students are about 41% of total fall 2023 projected FTE enrollment. That has continued to grow. Back in 2015, that was a little bit under 33%. So you can see that component of our enrollment continues to grow at a healthy rate. Graduate students, as noted here, have increased from 2015 from 17% of our enrollment to 19.3%, something that we're also working on as a point of emphasis. So here's a quick
Could
look.
you back up just for one reason? And Provost Gonzalez has heard me say this like 20,000 times. That green bar that's a problem for us. Graduate student residents. That's a problem for us. There's an issue, something going on. We don't know what it is. I don't know if it's affecting the other schools in the same way as us, but it's something we're focusing attention on. There's an under attainment of the pursuit of certain graduate degree programs well below what the population should be pursuing. So if you compare us with Metro Seattle, Metro Austin, Metro Denver, Metro Salt Lake City, just picking comparable places, we're underperforming. And so we're trying to figure out what that is. And Nancy's going to solve
it. So this next slide just shows a comparison of how the budget is broken down by revenue source here. You see it on the left, the budget that was approved, the FY 2023 estimate, and what the FY 24 operating budget is on the right. Not a huge amount of change there. A couple of things I'd mention. You see public investment there mathematically works out to about 10% of total enterprise operating revenue. A couple of quick points on that. One is that includes about $62 million in projected state investment in our preparatory schools, which is one of our component units. It also includes money that goes toward capital investments, much of which, as John was saying earlier, is one time and going away. And so if I remove those types of capital investments and look only at operating, it is less than 10% of our revenue from operating. The other thing I'd mention, of course, is that you're seeing here the rolling off of the one-time monies that were provided by the federal government, mostly HERF funding, although there's some other acronyms that fit in there, and that essentially is done. And we have expended all of our money for student support and are finishing up on the institutional support side as well.
Contextually, and Morgan, you might want to comment on this after I come on. And so this is a healthy set of ratios here, that we're not as obsessively tuition dependent as a lot of private colleges or universities have ended up being. We have a split of revenues, other revenues that are coming in. Would you want to comment on that, Morgan, just in terms of ratios and so forth?
Sure. Well, over time, and I thought John's presentation really set this up nicely. What we experienced at ASU during the Great Recession, 2008 through 2012, is we lost 40% of our state investment over that time period, and it
never
was
recovered.
Static. It was static for a long period of time. That was actually 40% of our state investment over those 4 years. Really didn't come back. And the other thing that happened over that time period is we were fortunate to be able to continue to grow enrollment substantially. So if I factored in FTE enrollment and calculated on a per FTE student basis, we lost about 51% of our state investment per student. And so that's the other thing that's happening, you know, as we're increasing our scale and being able to serve more students in an effort, you know, to move our populace up to, at least a national average in terms of the proportion that's college educated. State investment simply isn't keeping up there. So what has happened, to President Crow's point, is that we, as part of our business strategy, have attempted to grow other revenue streams. So we're going to collect over $2.5 billion in tuition and fee revenue this year. And I would tell you that the growth in that, the large majority of it is not rate. It's growth in enrollment is how that is happening. So we also have been successful in growing other parts of our enrollment in terms of, gifts and some of our other entrepreneurial activities. That's all been an important part of sort of diversifying the base and having a more, stable, multi-legged stool, if you will. But our ability to increase online enrollment, our ability to increase non-resident enrollment, our ability to increase international enrollment have all been really critical parts of making this all work and, frankly, keeping the price for Arizona students as affordable as possible.
So let me just add 2 data points to put into the context of this budget presentation in terms of where we're going. So even Learning Enterprise, which Maria Anguiano and her team of 120 startup staff are advancing. So she has a 20% margin objective. So she'll be advancing a learning enterprise courses that are not degree programs and other ways in which people can learn, for which we're going to give some of that away. We're going to interact with our alums and citizens of Arizona in transactional ways where there's no cost. But if we're giving you an important course that's important to the future of your career, well, there's going to be a transaction for that, and we're going to generate net positive revenue for that. A few days ago, I was in an area of Cairo, Egypt called New Cairo, where they're building a massive new city, including 15 new universities net total. One of those is one of our Sintana partner universities, Galala University. And when that relationship is fully operational, Galala University will be sending 300 3-1 degree international exchange students to ASU as a mechanism for us to further enhance our ability to train and educate people at a very high level and generate a revenue stream that allows us to perform the mission that we're attempting to perform. That institution, Galala University, it was fantastic. The investments that have been made by the Egyptian government, the students that I was able to meet there, the kinds of individuals that will ultimately be the top of those students coming to ASU, as well as our Powered by ASU fee. So to Morgan's point about how we do this and how we advance this, you all as the board have given us the means and the mechanisms to self-finance the attainment of the objectives that we have in place. And our concern about the lack of state investment is specific to people coming from Arizona, students coming from Arizona, finding ways for them to attend at the lowest possible cost at the highest level of success. And so all of this is sort of intertwined together. And what you're seeing is a reflective outcome of the decisions that we've made, including how to self-finance the institution. There was a moment with a 51% reduction in commitment from the state on a per student basis during the Great Recession that we could have folded up our tent and not taken on these kinds of measures and these kinds of things, or not been ready to, and the outcome would have been disastrous. And so what you're seeing now is a very positive set of outcomes derivative of this highly entrepreneurial enterprise model.
So in interest of time, here is the other side of the income statement here, some small changes, nothing particularly notable here. And then finally, monthly days cash on hand. This is sort of one measure. There are others, but this is one measure of institutional capacity. And what you can see here is that we have essentially been able to maintain our operating cash, days of cash on hand within the range that the board has established. I'm sorry?
Where were we when you came?
We were kind of below that target minimum.
Kind of.
Just to point that out, below the target minimum.
So everybody's done a great job in working on that. We don't exist, we're not a financial institution. We exist to achieve our mission. But there has to be balance in order to have that institutional capacity do those things. You have to have the financial capacity and equilibrium over time. And I think what this reflects is that we feel comfortable about where we are. So I will stop. And if there are questions, we'll be happy to address them.
Questions or comments from the board? Okay, seeing none.
Okay.
Next.
Next we have President Cruz Rivera.
Thank you, Regent Herbold, and I will be turning the conversation over to our Senior VP and CFO, Bjorn Flugstad. Just wanted to say a couple of things. One is that our state university's finances are strong across all the key metrics that we monitor, and two, that the budget that we will be presenting is very well aligned with our values and investment priorities, given our embrace of our access mission. Bjorn.
Thank you, President Cruz Rivera. Members of the board, we have a few slides here just to provide context to the materials that you had received prior to the committee meeting. This very first slide highlights some of the main takeaways from that information. We do have a projected net position increase for this year as well as next year. Liquidity measure, as just referenced within the days cash on hand, is well within the board approved range. We do address investments in people for this upcoming year, as well as what we had done this year. We are expecting tuition fee revenue growth as well as enrollment growth for this upcoming year. And revenue growth also projected to increase despite the reduction or the removal of the $26 million in one-time appropriation for this year. And the last point is really important too. Just this past spring, over the past few months, both Moody's and S&P reaffirmed credit ratings as well as outlooks for the university. This slide is a longer term picture for net position, and it shows NAU growing, especially in the past few years, showing that net position increase at a higher level than what had been stabilized at for a number of years. So that is what this upcoming fiscal year is projected to be. This slide is really focused on the revenue, and on the left-hand side, you show revenue increases and revenue decreases on the right-hand side. So as I mentioned, tuition and fee is projected to grow in terms of revenue as well as enrollment. Auxiliary revenue continues to be strong not only this year, but also for next year. Highest levels of auxiliary revenue on record this year, and we expect to exceed that for next year. The note related to sponsored project revenue as well as facilities and administrative overhead, we're seeing 18% growth this year. That's the highest point for F&A revenue that we've seen, and we expect to see that continue going into next year. And on the positive side too, with the interest rates higher this year than last year, we are seeing a good bump in our investment income, i.e. interest earnings. I've already noted the removal of this $26 million one-time on the state appropriation. As mentioned earlier, we'll see the removal also of the HERF, the Higher Education Emergency Relief Funds, as they continue to get spent out. We just have a few remaining dollars that will go into next year related to some IT expenditures just because of supply chain. And then a slight adjustment in TRIF just in terms of some of the awards. It's hard to know what awards will be made from year to year. Related to enrollment, we had made a presentation during the tuition and fee setting for growth for this upcoming year. That noted was a 1.7% growth, 444 FTE. This budget is slightly based upon a slightly higher number as noted in the first line. And you can see what that number is, 2.5%. The growth is related to graduate enrollment. And you can see in the very bottom half, there's particular growth within graduate on the international and non-resident enrollment growth. So very good positive sign related to an enrollment picture. This shows the revenue trend for NAU. You can see the arrow at the very top, noting what that impact was related to the one-time HERF funds and what that did for the last couple of years. And as noted, even with the reduction of the HERF funds and the $26 million state appropriation, going to projected revenue increase next year despite of that. So good trend for revenue. This is a lot of information, but it really does show you size-wise related to the state general fund, which is 20-ish, 20 to 24%, the varying lines in terms of impact to NAU's finances. So a very significant impact. Net tuition and fee revenue is in the 35% range. So, we had seen, from John's presentation earlier in 2008, as reference, our state appropriation was 40% of our revenue and tuition and fees was 20%. So we've seen a really reversal of that overall revenue mix. Expenditures, salary and wages, the biggest number here. It's been pretty predictable in the 60% range, and that's what it's showing for this upcoming year. 60% of our expenditures are related to salary and wages as we project, a merit increase, merit program for this upcoming year as well, likely in the middle of the year, just as we had done for this year. So having a half-year impact on that. And this is the last slide, the days cash on hand. You can see we're at 175 for the upcoming year, at a higher range than what we had been in 2008. And as a number of years in the intervening years where we were really hovering in that, 150-ish range, give or take. So we are, at a very still healthy margin for days cash on hand. With that, I will stop and answer any questions.
Any questions from the board? Comments?
Thank you, President Cruz-Rivera. Now we'll move to University of Arizona and President Robbins.
Okay, while Lisa's making her way up, I just want to thank Lisa and her team, including Garth Perry, who I think is still here today, and Provost Folks for taking on the very difficult task of transitioning us from RCM to the new AIB, activities informed budgeting model. I always prefer moving more towards incremental budgeting, but I do think this new model helps the colleges to have some predictability, and it's formulaically driven. But it is different from RCM, which was very complex. This is meant to be a simpler budgeting process, but of course, there's going to be some growing pains as people realize how to implement it. And I want to thank the deans and all of their staff for going through this. I actually, for the first time, participated in the individual meetings with each of the units and each of the colleges with Liesl and Lisa, and it certainly gave me a lot of insight into how difficult this process is. We get here and we present this, but there's a lot of hard work that goes into the budget that Lisa will now present.
Thank you, President Robbins and Regents. And President Robbins, I'm glad that you mentioned that you participated in the process, because I wanted to give you a shout out. We have over 40 meetings with colleges and support units, and President Robbins cleared his calendar to be able to participate in as many of those as possible. And it really made a difference, not only to the units who are giving those presentations to have the president in the room, but to our team to show how much he supports this process. So our process is very inclusive, includes students, shared governance, and university administration. And we are continuously working to find the most efficient and effective services as possible. We look at this budget as an example of that commitment. So as President Robbins just mentioned, we have just completed or will complete in 15 days our first year in the AIB model, Activity Informed Budgeting. We are really pleased with the implementation. It went very well this year. And this model really allows us to look at strategic priorities and investments in a way that RCM that was more formulaic did not allow us. It also allows us to leverage the model to be able to have unit level conversations about their strategies and goals and talk about the resources that they have in-house in order to be able to move their goals forward. Like our colleagues at ASU and NEU, we are planning increases in revenue for through enrollment, auxiliary and research growth. And we are making investments in our employees. We talked at the tuition hearings about the investments that we're making in our annual salary increase program. That's a 4% program this year. All units are planning for that. We're also making investments in key strategic areas. So John, I really appreciated your presentation also. You all may be surprised that I'm about to celebrate my 22nd anniversary at the University of Arizona. So you, on July 1st, you were talking my lived experience. Garth Perry, who's in the back, and I were messaging each other and really appreciated how you laid out the context for us. We will have a balanced budget this year. And that really is with minimal assistance from the state. I thought you laid that out beautifully. Appreciate you taking the time to do that for us. Our net position will increase. We look at this as essentially a flat budget on a $2.5 billion revenue to increase 28.9 million is, yes, it's up, but requires us to take a look at all of our operations and find efficiencies across the institution. So some specifics, we are projecting $48 million increase in tuition, and that is due to increases in non-resident undergraduate enrollment, as well as our Arizona online programs. We are expecting continued growth in auxiliary services, and we are seeing gains in housing and student union and campus bookstores. Our activity is now projected to exceed pre-pandemic levels. Our grants and contracts are continuing to increase, and we're expecting an increase in sponsored awards and a slight decreases in some of our affiliations agreement revenues, that such as those with Banner Health. Okay, here you can see that our revenues are projected to increase about $34 million when compared to the forecast. We have the $48 million in net tuition revenue, and that's consistent with what we shared with you during the tuition setting process. We expect an increase of about 2.4% in enrollment, about 1,154 student FTE. That's largely driven by increases in traditional and online non-resident undergrads. And then for expenses, I already mentioned the salary increase program. We expect our largest increase to be in the salary and wages, $53.1 million. That's reflecting our commitment to retain and recruit the personnel that we need to move our mission forward. Our benefits will increase along with those salaries and wages, and our all other operating expenses will increase slightly. We see that what we see is like ASU and NEU, with having spent out all of the stimulus funding that we receive, we had one-time expenditure increases over the last several years as we spent down those stimulus funds. So we don't see as large of an increase here on the other operating expenses as we do with personnel. Our debt service will also increase, and that's related to the new capital construction that you all have approved and have seen going up on campus. Okay, this is the first time that we have shared a view of University of Arizona with UAGC impacts. We are 15 days away from being fully integrated. WASC asked us to present this combined view so that you could review the UAGC budget. And I know that you all are looking at the column and focusing right on that negative $18.3 million and are interested in what drives that. So this is a budget perspective, and what it shows is investments that UAGC plans to make in IT infrastructure. IT infrastructure is critical to all of our success, but definitely UAGC, as it's a fully online institution, they must have robust IT infrastructure, and they expect to make investments in fiscal year 24 and 25. There are also some increases for UAGC related to one-time personnel increases as they transition from their benefit plan to our benefit plan. We expect that they will be able to cover these expenses with their own cash. They plan to transfer approximately $37.5 million in unrestricted cash that will cover these investments. So while from a net position, it looks negative, they will be covering it with their own resources after they're integrated on June 30th. Lisa, just briefly,
I mean, this is an operational, I don't see anything in the expense lines here about, I mean, it all goes on the balance sheet is what you're telling me.
The assets and liabilities go on the balance sheet. The cash will go on the balance sheet.
The investment in the IT.
Yeah. What you would see here, if we were to look at a comparison between their fiscal year 23 budget, where you see all other operating expenses at 96.5, you'd see the bump from 23 to 24, where they're making that investment in IT.
Okay.
We don't see it here because we only have the 1 year.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome. Okay, this is one other place in your packet where you see UAGC. It is the only other place in the packet where we show the combined in that position. And you may have noted that in your packet, there was a slightly larger increase in our estimated net position, the change from 23 to 24. So this graph includes an addition of $91 million in net position for UAGC. We recently received some updated information from UAGC that clarified their net position. This graph that you see here and will be in the final board packet properly demonstrates our combined net position. And the information from UAGC was reviewed and the estimates were approved by the UAGC board before we put this together. So this, as I mentioned, this clarification does not affect any of our other submitted materials. And then finally, our days cash on hand. You can see that we are still within the Moody's median range. And you can see the impact of the stimulus funding that we received in fiscal year 21 and the spend down of those funds. So we're in a relatively similar position to where we were in fiscal year 19 prior to the pandemic. So I think that this budget really represents our commitment to our strategic priorities to serving our students, our staff, and our community. I'll stop there and ask if you have any questions. Any questions from the board?
Sure. A very brief one, but I'd like to address it, Lisa, to you as well as to Morgan and Bjorn. All of these budgets assumed the governor's budget projections. It's not what we received. We've taken a cut of 50, give or take, $1 million. Would you all, in working perhaps with your GAG teams, because much as they do, we engage with the governor's office and legislators as to what these cuts mean. Could you give us some sort of each of you brief synopsis of where those cuts will be absorbed so that we can answer that question?
Sure.
Thank you.
Regent Duvall, you would like us to send that or do that
Just
now or
Yeah.
send it to you?
No. Send
Okay.
it to John and
Perfect.
we'll circulate it. Yeah, thank you.
Happy to.
They were risk
I'd take it now.
Now we're late.
Great. Okay, thank you, President Robbins. I would like to move that the board approve the fiscal year 2024 annual budgets for Arizona State University, Northern Arizona University, University of Arizona, and the ABOR office as described in the executive summary. Is there a second?
Second.
Chair Manson, we have a motion and a second. If you would call for the vote.
All those in favor, aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion does carry.
For item number 6, great. We have a presentation on a pretty unique subject, namely metrics, if they would load the first slide. What we're after here is to be able to verify that we're running our universities smartly from an operational standpoint. And what we were after is about 10 or 15 metrics, not a lot, that would be frozen over time so that as we measure each year, we know with confidence that we're not in an apples and oranges situation. We also want them to be fairly high level, and we don't want to get in the weeds. We want to be able to fairly easily define these and to calculate them, although in some cases it's been a challenge. But if we can get this baby to operate.
Next.
There we go. Up, other way. Cool.
Maybe.
There you go. There we go.
Okay, that's the goal statement. Basically, it captures what I just said. A slow dissolve. The members of this team, I want to point out, because they're the ones that did all the hard work. And we have the 3 CFOs from our 3 universities, plus Jane Kuhn and Andrew Comrie and Brad from the ABOR office. I can't tell you how appreciative we are of the work of these people, because this was over and above the normal call of duty. The first step that we instituted was to decide what areas do we actually want to measure? What are the key operational areas that make sense from the standpoint of having a few metrics that are really important to us? These are the 6 that we isolated. In each case, the goal would be anywhere from 1 to 3 or 4 metrics that would clearly demonstrate in each of these areas that we are doing a professional job in managing these things. Also, over time, we're going to be able to track as well as compare across universities, not only our own universities, but in some cases, these metrics use databases that we feed, as well as a lot of other universities feed, that provide common data so that we can make direct comparisons to other universities, which will be very fruitful. Let me quickly go through these. You hopefully have read in detail all of these. The 3 in the academic area, cost of education per student, sounds simple. Actually, it's more complicated than you think to calculate. We're going to do this 3 ways. We're going to do it for on-campus. We're going to do it for online, and that will require some work initially from an accounting standpoint in terms of defining exactly what are these buckets of cost. And so that work will get done because it has to get done. The online activities are becoming so important to us that we have to know just how well we're operating them. Naturally, net tuition and fee per student is a great one. The third one is rather intriguing. It's, hey, in terms of the classes you have scheduled, how many students are really in these classes? And what we're worried about is, do we have a bunch of classes where we've got 2, 3, 4, namely single digit number of students per class? These are undergraduate classes. Now, we certainly understand that with graduate classes, you have more people, but more students. But by and large, we will be able to compare across universities and get some data from other universities. This is going to be very fascinating to see what goes. The builds are very slow, as you notice. In the academic, or excuse me, administrative area, student to non-faculty staff ratio, or in other words, are we administratively fat? Okay, that's what we're after. Administrative expenses as a percent of the total of our expenses, and turnover rate of various kinds of employees. And we have several buckets of different kinds of employees, and it will be interesting to look across universities because this is a real cost in some cases for our universities, because especially in the administrative area, sometimes you have very high turnover. In terms of facilities, classroom utilization, we're literally going to take the classrooms in total and look at how many of them and how they're being utilized, by how many hours they're being utilized. So this is an efficiency measure in terms of, are we overbuilt, or in some cases, are we massively underbuilt in terms of restraining the system too much? The percent of dorm room beds that are occupied, but it turns out actually what's equally as important is what's the size of our waiting list, because as we've heard, especially at ASU and actually at the other universities as well, we're really cramped for dorm space. The third one here is to take a look at our energy and water bills and divide that by the number of employees and students that are on campus. Should be very revealing across universities as to where we come out. And in some cases, our universities are doing some pretty smart things in terms of how they buy these kinds of power and water, and those practices can be shared. As far as faculty measures, oops, it disappeared too fast. But basically, the faculty measure that we want is the number of faculty basically per student. And once again, this is a measure of just how efficient we are in hiring our faculty and being efficient with it. Facilities, classroom percent utilization. Oh, that's the same one, excuse me. Student services expenditures are per student. This will be a small number, but it's relevant because in some cases, there are vast differences as to how much service we are actually providing or whether we're underperforming in that area. As far as IT, we're going to look at spending on campus and online together as a total. This one is very hard to separate the two. And we're also going to look at total IT people. And this is both centralized IT as well as decentralized. So should give us a good measure as to how we're using technology, whether we're underutilizing it or excessively utilizing. So that's the idea. Those are the 14 measures that we will be pursuing. The first chance we will get is in November, when we will have closed the books, so to speak, on the data from this fiscal year, and then every year thereafter. And once again, the trends are what's important. So this is truly a long-term project, but one that it's important to get the thing started, and hopefully our children and their children will enjoy the benefit of these metrics over time. So with that, are there questions?
comment from Regent Pedley?
Regent Herbold, I do have a couple of comments. I wonder as we move forward with these, and by the way, I think this is a good move. So I'm appreciative of where you're headed on this. I think it's long overdue. But on the administrative metrics, I wonder if we should, in light of President Crow's comments on the discount rate, really look at institutional financial aid per FTE, which is more of a positive ratio than a negative ratio, and looking at the potential that we have to provide more financial aid. So I wonder if we could look at that in a way that addressed financial aid per FTE rather than the discount rate. But maybe you have a good reason for wanting to use discount rate rather than financial aid.
Well, in defining discount rate, we're not far apart, Larry.
We're in the same. I'm just turning it. Yeah, you and I are dealing with the same thing.
To some extent, it's a labeling issue. And
yes,
I understand it very well. It's a valid comment, and we'll take that into concern as we move ahead. Good comment.
My second comment really deals with energy use. And I laud us for looking at increased efficiency on energy use.
Yeah.
We know how expensive that is and how much that adds to our expenses. But in light of how much renewable energy we're already generating on some of our campuses and how we're really lowering the CO2 per BTU, I wonder if we shouldn't include something there. And the reason I not only used renewable energy in my comment, as well as CO2 per BTU, really addresses the fact that we know that natural gas, for instance, really, if handled effectively, reduces the CO2 generated per BTU. And while we may or may not be terribly dependent on natural gas, I wonder if in light of the environmental issues, we shouldn't be including some kinds of measure or measure two with regard to the energy, because I think you can look at that in a little more complex way and really address some important issues about sustainability as well in the context of that one.
We will take a look at that. It's a very good idea in the context of what's happening in the world and what it should mean for the future.
Well, and as you know, most corporations these days are very much looking at that because it reduces their expenses.
That's exactly right. One thing I should point out is that the process we used basically was to brainstorm what the areas would be, and then to brainstorm what the metrics would be, and finally make some decisions. And then we moved to the toughest part of this task, which is to nail down exactly how you're going to define each one of these measures. And each of the 6 individuals that are on the team took 2 or 3 of these. And they are the ones that did the hard work in terms of making sure that we had the data that would enable us on an ongoing basis to make these calculations. So I can't emphasize enough how much we appreciate the effort of the 6 people that you saw on that slide earlier. It was a great effort on that part. Are there remaining questions?
Bob, the only other comment I would make on water, and this really as a result of conversations with Rob Walton in the past, and also standing outside the local Walmart the other day here in Flagstaff, there's a fairly large plaque now that looks at the extent to which that particular Walmart is using rainwater as a source of its landscaping, watering its flowers, et cetera. So we could also look at really sources of water use, not just the total water bill. And as you know, Walmart has been a leader in sustainability in so many ways from the early days when they began to darken freezers and other activities, as well as put in substantial skylights in those large stores. So I would just suggest we also take a look at not just the total water bill, but perhaps how we're
that would work really well in Seattle. I don't know about Phoenix.
Well, it works in Flagstaff a whole lot better than it does in Phoenix and Tucson. Because they could show 85%, I think, or 80% of their water usage coming from rainwater in storage in Flagstaff, which is substantial.
And surprising.
It's shocking. Yeah. It was a positive statement.
Yeah.
Regent Herbold, thank you. So the IT component, which means students per, 1,000 students per IT. However, IT is very broad, especially when we have attacks and the time that we put to resolve, those kind of problems. Is there's any breakdown on that?
No.
Okay.
What we tried to do was keep this high level.
Okay.
We may learn that that's an area that becomes so robust that we have to have key measures, but hopefully right now, those are small numbers. Now, we know we get a lot of attacks, and we know that we have some pretty good defense mechanisms out there, but it's certainly a key issue that deserves, ongoing attention. It's a good comment.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Other comments? Okay, I move that the board approve the proposed suite of metrics to address the board's interest in evaluating efficiency at the universities through a variety of operational contexts as described in the executive summary. Is there a second?
Second.
Chair Manson, we have a motion and a second. If you would call the vote.
All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion does carry. Thank you.
Item number 7A and 7B will be covered now. On 7A, ASU is requesting individual project and financing approval for the Macro Technology Works Area Number 2 renovation project and a lease for this location. Morgan is going to address this.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. So there are actually 2 action items here, and there's a third item related to this project that the board approved on consent agenda related to our annual capital plan, but it's all about the same thing, which is that we have a renovation project in our Macro Technology Works building, which sits in the ASU Research Park in South Tempe. What we're doing is renovating about 10,000 square feet. Much of it will be clean room space. We're expanding the total clean room space that's available in the building. Years ago, the university bought this building from Motorola. So it's been modernized since then and used for a variety of research purposes. This is really focused around support of the semiconductor industry. Our knowledge enterprise folks, including Sally Morton, who I know here somewhere in the audience, have been really leading this effort in an effort to support the growing semiconductor industry in the state. And one of the things that they've impressed upon us is that
Her name and she appears.
they have a need for talent as they expand. There's a $40 billion project for Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, and a project that I think at last count was somewhere in the neighborhood of $12 to $15 billion for expansion in Intel, which has been a long time Valley player in the semiconductor industry. So we have a partner that will be named in a big announcement that Sally will be part of, that we're holding on the name. The board, of course, is aware of it, but we want to keep that for the big reveal. So it'd be a 10,000 square foot roughly renovation, about an $80 million budget. That cost will be shared among the university, our partner, and we are also going to be receiving some additional support in the way of a $30 million grant that will all be part of this big announcement. So we're really excited about it. It will create the clean room space I mentioned, as well as support. There's a lot of infrastructure work, and when I tell you about the second item, a lease here, you will kind of see some of the costs that go along with operating this type of space. So the project is about $80 million. There's no impact on our debt ratio, since essentially it will be all cash to the university. And so I would recommend this item to the board, and happy to answer questions. And if you want to know a whole lot more than I'd be able to tell you about, semiconductor wafers and that kind of fun stuff, Sally's here as well.
Questions? Okay, thank you very much. We're going to separate the project from the lease. So let's first deal with the project. I would move that the board approve the Arizona State University Macro Technology Works Area Number 2 renovation, which is approximately 10,000 square feet, $80 million major capital project that will be funded by grants, capital commitments, university local funds, as described in the executive summary. Is there a second?
Second.
Chair Manson, we have a motion and a second. If you would call the vote.
All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion does carry.
It's only $8,000 a square foot.
Cheap.
Aye, too.
For the lease, I would move that the board approve authorizing all appropriate actions necessary to execute a lease between Arizona State University for space within the Macro Technology Works building in the ASU Research Park in Tempe, as described in the executive summary. Is there a second?
Second.
Chair Manson, we have a motion and a second. If you would call for the vote.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion does carry.
Chair Manson, this concludes the Finance, Capital, and Resource Committee agenda.
Thank you, Regent Herbold. We are going to,
Yeah.
we have a question, sorry.
Did
question,
we
comment?
cover the lease as well?
Yes, we just
Okay,
did that.
Good.
Yep. Okay, so we are going to take, I hate to do this to you, but a 5-minute break. We will come back at 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
5 minutes.
Thank you, everybody. So Regent Duval, as Chair of the Academic Affairs and Educational Attainment Committee, would you please present items 8 through 10?
Thank you, Madam Chair. A pleasure. We have 2 items on the agenda today. A request from the board office for approval of a TRIF-supported Regents Community Grant. Very excited about this new product, and a request from NAU for appointment of 2 Regents professors. I will also provide a brief report on our last committee meeting. So our first item is to approve the TRIF-supported Regents Community Grant. And this regards research concerning Central Arizona Fire Department recruitment and retention challenges related to housing. Ken, I think I saw Palasko from the ABOR office, and Scott Freitag, who is immediate past president of the Arizona Fire Chiefs Association, are here to present this item, and appreciate your being here, both of you, and look forward to this being the first of many of our new community grant awards. Over to you, Ken.
Chair and Regents, the Regents Community Grant Program was designed in parallel the Regents Research Grants, and to leverage Arizona's public university research talent to solve problems, come up with options and strategies to address the critical issues facing Arizona communities today. The prototype, the first Regents Community Grant, was just voted on and approved about 2 months ago. And it was developed in conjunction with state firefighters, police leadership, County Supervisors Association, the League of Town and Cities. The research was designed by our 3 universities to better understand the reasons and possible solutions to Arizona's police and fire recruiting and retention issues. This is a statewide research program, and it was under a time constraint to have a final report within 9 months. And I believe they'll have a final report in October. And I really want to commend the 3 universities to working to that short timeline. Following this grant, we were contacted with a more specific, just firefighter and medical, and a geographically focused issue with recruitment and retention in the Prescott Valley region. This is the second Regents Community Grant proposal. Before I introduce or turn it over to the fire chief, one point I would like to emphasize: this Regents Community Grant proposal is for $57,650. And NAU is also matching that amount to the tune of $47,060. I'll pause now for any questions before I introduce the fire chief. If none, I would like to introduce Fire Chief for Central Arizona Fire and Medical, immediate president of Arizona Fire Chiefs Association, Scott Freitag, to discuss recruiting and retention issues facing the Prescott Valley area. Scott?
Members, thank you for allowing me to be here today to speak with you. We're in a different time in the fire service than I have ever experienced, and this is my 30th year. Not only do we have a smaller workforce to work with, and as far as recruiting, the retention side of things, what we're finding, especially in rural parts of Arizona, Prescott Valley, Prescott in particular right now, that's the one I'm most familiar with, and that our firefighters have simply been priced out of the market. And if you're familiar with the Quad City area, Prescott Valley, we're kind of like an island, right? We're not rural because we have 156,000 plus people there, but we're not urban enough. We're not surrounded by anyone. So when we hire or recruit, right now, what we're having to do is recruit out of the valley or other areas around the state, sometimes from out of state. The challenge that we have is there's no housing in our area that is attainable, not even rentals. When you look at rental prices for new firefighters, Yavapai College did a great job of identifying the median home price is $672,000. That takes $156,000 roughly average salary to get into the housing market in that area, and the median income of a firefighter is between $54,000 $55,000. So right off the bat, you can imagine the challenges that they have getting into housing in the area. So what happens? There are still folks who want to be firefighters. I mean, who wouldn't? This is the best profession in the world, in my opinion. But they test for different fire department jobs until they find one to get their foot in the door. And Central Arizona Fire Medical Authority has never been that stepping stone. We've always done well recruiting from within our community or within the local area. Unfortunately, especially since COVID, that has changed. And we're seeing that we're getting more people from outside the area and having to lower our standards and lengthen our academy to get people in. Now, what does this do for us? It starts to chip away and change the culture of an organization, because typically fire departments have really represented the communities that they serve. You see our folks out on the ball field being the coach for the baseball team, or on the football field being the coach, or in the Rotary, in the Lions Club. When you start to have to recruit from other areas in the state where people don't live, we end up with what I term commuter firefighters. They don't live there. They don't have the connection. So not only do you lose the connection and does the culture start to shift, but you see an increase in absenteeism, which is an additional cost to the agency. Now, when we hire someone and they leave because they live in the valley, and so they get a job in the valley, if they've left within the first 12 to 18 months, that's $100,000 to $150,000 investment that we just lost, and the community that somehow has to be recruited and replaced. And as that becomes more of a trend, there's more cost that goes into that. And as we know, everything else costs more as well. So if we look at the cost of a fire engine, 2020, $650,000, 2023, it's 1.1 million. We can't just spend money hand over fist to train new firefighters and have them leave again. Not to mention, if you're a new firefighter and you live you live in the valley and you're commuting up, that's a lot of windshield time. So that's an additional 3 to 4 hours travel time that you're away from your family. That's increased cost in fuel and maintenance on your vehicle. So even taking a job that pays a little bit less or similar in the valley means an increase in time with family. So that work-life balance, and increases the money in your pocket because you don't have the expense of the fuel. What we don't know, we know what the problem is. We really don't have any idea how to figure out how to solve it. We've tried to look around the country. We have talked to developers about ideas on how do we develop some sort of attainable housing model, and every one of them is met with some sort of federal challenge, whether it's the Fair Housing Act or just the financial side of it. For example, they said, well, if you just own it, then that makes it easy. I said, that's awesome. Where do I get the money to just own it? I'm still trying to buy fire engines at $1.1 million. I can't do that. I was in Montana this last weekend, and we're not the only ones facing this problem. Fire chiefs across the West are seeing similar issues in their states. In fact, I was able to potentially recruit a resident volunteer firefighter, a great candidate for us. As much as I want her to apply, I'm not sure even if we offer the job, she can take it, which is another lost opportunity for us. So I need some way to figure out, how do we do this? Is that For example, right now, there's federal legislation running through to help volunteer firefighters with housing, but there's nothing for career firefighters. You know, there's VA loans that help veterans get homes. Is there anything available, any model that could help with that? What are attainable housing models or developments in other communities that have been used? I don't have the resources or the finances to invest in that. And that's where this research is so vitally important to us and our future as an organization. I'll leave you with this. When you look at the state to the left of us, we have a lot of LA firefighters that live in my jurisdiction. And what they've done is shifted the model of work schedule so that they can fly here, stay for 2 or 3 weeks, fly back there, work 7, 8, 10 days in a row. I'm here to tell you that is not safe. That is leading to increased cancer. It's leading to increased mental and behavioral health issues in firefighters. I'm trying to get ahead of this issue for us. And if you think from the safety standpoint, if a firefighter's worked to stand up 24 for us and then lives in the valley, stand up 24 means they didn't get any sleep. Now they're getting on 17 and trying to drive home. So we have another safety component that is part of the overall, what does this look like? And how do I get housing that are in the reach of firefighters? And I'll just say apartments are great, but for small growing families, they're not the ideal. A lot of people in the country want to rent right now, but I think our small families in the fire service want to own. So how do we move them in that direction in the community they serve? And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Terrific. Let me just say first, I mean, this is exactly the kind of thing that we'd hope we'd do with community grants. So thank you for bringing it to our attention. Obviously, it's the second time we've partnered with the fire chiefs, the first being the PFAS forever chemical issue. And I can't think of a group of citizens and constituents who is a more powerful symbol of our ability to be of service than the fire chief. So thank you for your partnership and allowing the opportunity that you have for us to partner with you to try and address the problem. And like the PFAS, you know, if we get a solution, it's something that we can take to scale across the rest of the state and country. So offers real opportunity. So thank you.
Absolutely. And we appreciate the partnership with you all as well.
Okay. Anything else? All right, very good. This is an action item. So I need a motion to approve. Oh, I move. Yes, I do. I move that we approve the TRIF Supported Regions Community Grant, research concerning Central Arizona Fire Department recruitment and retention challenges relating to housing. Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved in second. And Chair Manson, call the vote.
All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion does carry. And we're
Thank you all very much.
Very
Appreciate
enthusiastic
it.
about trying to help with this. Thank you very much.
Next, I'd like to provide a report on the June 1st Academic Affairs and Educational Attainment Committee meeting. We received an update from ASU on its revised general election. I do that every time. General education. You know where I come out of. Revised general education program, and we look forward to a more detailed update in September. NAU requested approval to expand its pilot program, which created specific exemptions to the board's admissions policy. And the last item was a request from NAU asking the committee to forward its institutional university metric targets to the full board for approval. These targets took some time as NAU developed its strategic roadmap, and we look forward to having them in place and making progress towards them. I would just be pleased to announce that we now have enterprise and institutional metric targets for all 3 universities. Mission accomplished. Regent Penley, Regent Manson, others who have devoted an enormous amount of time to this. Congratulations. And the new arrival of our efficiency metrics led by Regent Herbold. So we are metric up and want to congratulate everyone. Thank you.
Gotta track it.
Yeah, our last item today is NAU's request for appointment of 2 Regents professors. Do we have Provost Pugliese with us to make the presentation? There she is. Madam Provost.
Thank you. And if it's all right, I'd like to invite our nominees to come and join me at the table.
Please do. Even better.
Oh,
that's nice. Lifetimes.
Committee Chair Regent Duvall, Chair Manson and Regents. I am deeply honored and humbled to present to you two among the many outstanding faculty at NAU for your consideration for appointment at the rank of Regents Professor. Doctors Catherine Gehring to my right and Dr. Heidi Wayment to my left are truly exceptional professors who stand out for the breadth of their accomplishments and the substantial impacts they've had through their research, teaching, mentoring, and leadership. Doctors Wayment and Gehring are both internationally recognized for their research, yet at the same time, they are deeply engaged as leaders and collaborators in work within the university that extends well beyond their areas of specialized research. They are scholars, teachers, and leaders that have importantly contributed to building key areas of NAU's key areas of strength in NAU's research enterprise, excellence in teaching and student mentoring, and leadership well beyond their home departments. Doctors Gehring and Wayman are both highly accomplished scientists who have not limited their achievements to their individual laboratories. They are highly valued and sought after colleagues across the university. Their drive for excellence has not only propelled their individual accomplishments, their careers of impact have also elevated students, colleagues, and Northern Arizona University as a whole. I'd like to take a little bit of your time to introduce you to each of these great scholars. Dr. Gehring, known as Kitty to us, is professor of biological sciences. Kitty's research examines biological interactions, symbiosis, centering around plant-associated fungi and their implications for ecosystems. Her work connects dynamics that scale from genetics to ecosystems. Kitty is an internationally recognized expert whose work has revealed how interactions among fungal communities affect health of trees and plants. Her research has examined critical interactions within diverse ecosystems, including grasslands, rainforests, salt marshes, and right here on the Colorado Plateau. Kitty's research has direct application, in fact, to the distinctive landscapes that are characteristic of our region, where she has collaborated widely to inform land management strategies and promote adaptation to climate and other environmental changes. Kitty is a fellow of the Ecological Society of America and serves as co-director of NAU's Center for Adaptable Western Landscapes. Kitty is widely regarded by students and colleagues for her excellence and devotion to teaching and mentoring. Her impact as a teacher spans from large first-year biology courses to graduate ecology and other specialized seminars, mentoring undergraduate and graduate students in her lab, and as faculty for programs that engage students in research experiences. Kitty's impact as a teacher is evident in the accomplishments of her students who have secured grants, published, and many of whom have gone on to have successful academic careers of their own. Kitty is a leader in advancing teaching and mentoring at NAU, securing grants that have supported programs enriching learning opportunities for NAU students. Kitty has an equally impressive record of leadership at NAU and beyond. She has served as the co-executive director of our Miriam Powell Research Center, editor of 3 different journals, and as a program officer at the National Science Foundation. Kitty has collaborated on numerous initiatives and projects with colleagues that have contributed substantially to cultivating the outstanding learning environment for students at NAU. Most recently, she participated in the NAU STEM Faculty Academy. Kitty holds the Lucking Family Professorship in Biological Sciences, which supports her efforts to engage students in hands-on research experiences. Kitty is highly active in the regional community, bringing her expertise to many organizations and endeavors. She has served on the board of directors for the Arboretum at Flagstaff, consulted with the Arizona Poison Control Center, probably for obvious reasons, contributed to the Flagstaff Festival of Science and the Glen Canyon Environmental Center. Kitty is a visionary scientist, generous mentor, and transformational leader with accomplishments and impact that merit the rank of Regents Professor. To quote from one of the many letters we received in support of her nomination, Dr. Gehring is a stellar combination of scholarly influence at the international scale, wise mentor, advisor, teacher, scholar in the classroom, and passionately dedicated citizen of the university and her profession. Dr. Wayman is professor of psychological sciences a long-term colleague of my own. Heidi's research cuts across the subfields in psychology and extends into health science, centering on stress and coping, identity processes, organizational change, and compassion. She has applied insights and strategies from her basic research to health, loss and grief, depression, organizations, and communities. She has been recognized by colleagues as a trailblazer. That's a quote. Her research is methodologically innovative and has advanced theory and numerous applications. Empirical strategies for measurement, reporting, and clinical interventions she has developed are being used by researchers and practitioners around the world. Several prominent international disciplinary organizations have honored Heidi for her scholarly contributions, including being named a fellow in the Society for Experimental Social Psychologists. Heidi is an equally and as broadly accomplished teacher and leader and innovator in curriculum design and pedagogy. Heidi's impact as a teacher extends well beyond psychological sciences, where she has taught courses spanning from our largest undergraduate courses to graduate seminars. Heidi has also taught numerous interdisciplinary and international courses. For instance, Heidi co-designed and taught a course with one of our philosophy professors, a course that addressed the question, what is a good life? She just, in fact, returned from Germany, where she led a group of NAU students on a study experience there. Heidi has collaborated widely with colleagues and mentored students in psychological sciences and many other disciplines. She is a generous and exceptional mentor. Her students learn and develop capacities that support their great academic and career accomplishments. Heidi has also been a highly accomplished and impactful leader here at NAU. She has served as chair of our Department of Psychological Sciences no less than 3 times. Was a designer and founding director of our PhD in interdisciplinary health, served as associate dean, and over this last year has served as interim dean of our College of Social and Behavioral Sciences. She has also been a leader and collaborator in our Center for Health Equity Research as a contributor to the Southwest Health Equity Research Collaborative Grant, focusing on developing research capacity across the university. Heidi has endeavored to apply insights from her research to arenas such as healthcare professionals, military families, and university athletic departments. She has led a distinctive initiative at NAU, something that may not have come across in the materials you have, called the Compassion Project, that engaged the local community in exploration of the role of compassion and well-being, community vitality, justice, teaching and learning, and other realms of human interaction. Throughout her career, Heidi has pursued excellence by developing her own capacities. In fact, just last year, she just earned a master's degree in data science, versatility, and through development of effective teams. A personal tidbit, Heidi was a very successful college and professional athlete. I think the practices and values that led to Heidi's athletic excellence have also led to her extraordinary and wide-ranging academic accomplishments that merit the rank of Regents Professor. To quote from one of the many letters we received in support of her nomination, quote, Dr. Wayment has built a career that spans disciplines, has been recognized as exceptional by the standards of leading scholars in the field, and has illustrated high impact and innovative teaching practices that furthered student learning. I am very, very proud to present these 2 outstanding faculty to you for appointment as Regents Professors.
Congratulations to you both. Obviously, this is the highest honor we can give you, and we're honored to do so. And it is clear from what we've just learned about you that you are both worthy of the distinction and title. And so congratulations. Dr. Wayman, your skills in coping and stress, I appreciate your willingness to could be a consultant to this board going forward as a condition of this award. Madam Chair, I move the board approve Northern Arizona University's request for appointment of Heidi Wayman and Catherine Gehrig as Regents Professor effective July 1, 2023. Do I have a second? Second. Moved and seconded. Madam Chair.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The motion does carry.
Congrats.
This concludes our report, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Regent Duvall. Our next item is the University of Arizona is asking the board to approve the acquisition of the University of Arizona Global Campus through an asset acquisition transaction. And President Robbins, could you introduce this item?
Yes. Thank you, Chair Madsen and board members. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for being patient through the journey of what's known as University of Arizona Global Campus. We only have a few minutes here, but it's a long story, and I appreciate all of the support you've given us to this point. We're in the position now of being able to achieve the ultimate objective of bringing UAGC into the University of Arizona, and we seek your approval for the acquisition of UAGC to be a part of the University of Arizona. I want to thank so many people that have put so many long hours into transitioning UAGC from Ashford that we acquired several years ago into this separate university, UAGC, and now will be coming into the University of Arizona. There's been a lot of work done, and I can't name the hundreds and hundreds of people who've been involved in this. I'm personally very excited about this, given that there are 40 million Americans that have some college experience, but no degree. And this is as part of our land grant mission. I think it's part of our offering to serve these students, and we're looking forward to having those students be Wildcats for life. So with that, I would ask the board to consider this request. Thank you.
Thank you, President Robbins. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Okay, seeing none, I move that the board approve the University of Arizona's acquisition of the University of Arizona Global Campus through an asset acquisition transaction as described in the executive summary. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion does carry. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, the board is asked to ratify President Robbins' appointment of Dr. Ronald W. Marks as University of Arizona's interim provost. And the floor is yours again.
As I've said many times publicly, I think the most difficult job in any university is being the provost, second only to being the interim provost. So I want to thank so many people who've given me advice on this appointment, and the many people that I've talked to and asked them would they be interested in this, and the many people who said they had no interest in this job, but they were flattered to be asked. Ron Marks got his PhD at Stanford University and served on the faculty at University of Michigan before being recruited to the University of Arizona, where he's had a long and distinguished career serving as the Dean of our College of Education. Ron went back to the faculty and has continued his incredible work with early childhood development and education with a robust database that he still does research on in collaboration with many people across the university, including public health and social and behavioral sciences. And he also still teaches classes. Ron, you're here.
The magic.
Surprise appearance. So it's with great honor that I present to you Dr. Ron Marks to serve as our interim provost. And Ron, I didn't realize that you were going to be technology. You just you came right in. So I wasn't expecting you to be here, but if it's okay with the chair, I would love to ask you, Dr. Marks, to say a few words.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Robbins. I appreciate the opportunity. And Regents, I'm very excited about doing this work for the University of Arizona. I've been on campus for 20 years. It's a great institution. I love it dearly. And we have lots of challenges, as all major research universities across the country have. But I'm confident with Dr. Robbins' leadership and the great deans that we have on campus that we'll be able to move forward with great success.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions for President Robbins or Professor Marks?
I will say, one of the things that I've learned about Ron is many things. He's an incredible individual, and I very much look forward to working with him. He probably had the best understanding of RCM of any of the deans during the time, and probably was one of the initiators of RCM in our university. I've been very impressed with he and Lisa Rolney worked together in the College of Education. He's worked with so many people across the university, and Ron, as you know, you have great respect from so many people across the university, but having that budgetary knowledge, and you've been a quick study on AIB, and I'm looking forward to your contributions working with Lisa and me as we go forward with the budget in this coming year. So thank you very much for agreeing to take on this enormously important job at the university.
Thank you. All right, any other questions or comments? Then I move that the board ratify the appointment of Dr. Ronald W. Marks as the interim Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs and University Provost for the University of Arizona. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion does carry. Welcome.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Yeah.
Congratulations. All righty, the next item on the agenda is the report from the Arizona Faculty Council, and that's Professor Dolan.
Okay. And we're on. Okay. Regents, presidents, and guests. As always, the faculty of the three universities extend a warm welcome and appreciate this opportunity to meet with you, sharing positive developments as well as concerns. Reflecting upon the recently concluded academic year, we take pride in the accomplishments thus far and acknowledge the work that still lies ahead. It's worth noting that all three university senates have issued diversity, equity, and inclusion statements or resolutions. Considering the recent ban on diversity, equity, and inclusion offices in public colleges and universities in Texas, we are aware of the real threats posed by revisionist history. We greatly value the continued support of the board regarding our stance on this matter. Tuition remains an important topic of discussion. According to data from U.S. News and World Report, tuition and fees at all universities have increased greatly from 2002 to the present. Coupled with current challenges related to inflation, the struggle for students to afford college education has intensified. We endorse the policy of providing significant need-based aid and hope that ABOR's new policy aimed at seeking greater legislative support will be successful in minimizing tuition hikes. In alignment with this, we commend the efforts of all three universities in improving food and housing security for students. Recognizing that many students live in or near poverty, work full-time, parent, and act as caregivers, we understand the additional challenges they face due to the high cost of living and housing. Attending college under such circumstances can significantly impact a student's mental and physical health. We look forward to the analysis of the strategies employed by each university to evaluate the measurable difference made in our well-being of our students. Additionally, we kindly request the inclusion of reproductive needs as part of the ongoing work of the basic needs coalitions at each university. The council strongly supports the establishment of a tri-university task force to assess the state of services available for reproductive health at our universities. It is crucial to provide education, advocacy, and support for sexual and reproductive health in order to care for the holistic well-being of our students. Addressing the challenges posed by generative artificial intelligence, GAI, on our pedagogy cannot be overlooked. A recent online survey involving 1,223 undergraduate and graduate college students revealed that 30% of them used ChatGPT for schoolwork during the 2022-23 academic year. To tackle this real change in the way students learn, each university has established task forces, workshops, and seminars NAU has created the NAU Task Force on AI. UA has formed the AI Squared Provost Committee, and ASU has a provost level committee focusing on AI issues for students and faculty. Additionally, the College of Global Futures at ASU is offering the very first prompt engineering course dealing with AI this summer. For those that are new to the phrase, prompt engineering is learning how to ask questions of AI in such a way as to elicit an actual usable and accurate response. Regarding the effect of NIL, name, image, and likeness, and the transfer portal on student athletes, we kindly request that the board or the University Governance and Operations Committee ask the universities to report on how they are educating and supporting their student athletes affected by NIL and the transfer portal. It would be beneficial to gain insight into the impact of these developments on student athletes. We would like to inform the board that we've updated our AFC bylaws, first time since 2004, and that I will be continuing by delegation of UA as AFC chair, and that NAU will be selecting the vice chair for council going forward. And as always, we want to thank Mark Denke for his wonderful guidance and direction. He is a most valuable advisor to the AFC. Lastly, we would like to acknowledge the outstanding leadership of Chair Lyndall Manson, who has guided the regions for the past 2 years. We express our gratitude for her unwavering support of our educational goals and collective efforts of our institutions. And we welcome Fred Duval to the chair position at ABOR. So thank you very much.
Thank you,
And
Professor
I hope there's
Bell.
any
Are there
questions.
any questions for the faculty council? And I just wanted to say, welcome back for another year.
Oh,
Thank you.
Indeed.
Reelected.
Our next item is the Student Regents Report and the report on student food and housing insecurities. And Regent Conyer, I believe the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Manson. The issue of student food and housing insecurity was first brought to the board by my predecessor, former student regent Anthony Rusk. And so I am very grateful to have the honor of sharing this information with the board, progress being made across the state to alleviate this burden on our students. And I want to first stress that this is not a one-woman job, but there's a large team of people that are making these changes happen. First, my co-student regent, Caitlin Reese, she has been a great ally in this effort. And also we've received support from the board office. I would like to thank the academic affairs team for the work that they put in, especially with this presentation and the brief that was sent out to the regents. Especially Mark Denke, as I was preparing for this presentation and his assistance. I'd also like to thank the universities for their efforts to support students on their individual campuses in very unique ways. I understand that this is a long-term effort and that each university has specific needs and ways of addressing this issue for students. And so with your work, with the assistance of state entities and with the board, I think that it's very possible that this issue can be eradicated. And I'm very excited to share some of the steps that have been taken over the past year. So first, I would just like to give a quick definition for what is determined as food and housing insecurity. So low food security is based on students having reduced quality or variety in their diet, whereas very low food security is a complete disruption in their eating patterns and a reduced access to food. And then in terms of housing insecurity, this describes students who reported disruption in their permanent housing situation, whether that was couch surfing or living somewhere that's an unideal situation, such as living outdoors. So it was found that outcomes within these two parameters are strongly statistically related to persistence through a degree program and eventual attainment of that degree. So it's very important to focus on as the board looking at these metrics and also as the university seeking to support these students. So the Hope Center conducted a national survey regarding these needs among students, compiling data from 123 universities. Within their survey, it was found that 45% of respondents were food insecure within the past 30 days, and 51% were housing insecure in the prior year. So in response, Student Regents recommended that the board address this issue through a tri-university work group, which would assess student food and housing insecurity. And the recommendations that were approved by the board for the university were to conduct campus surveys, develop a basic need work group / committee, create a communications plan and portal, and present an annual report to the board, which is what I'll be summarizing today. The primary goal through this was to determine what food insecurities and housing needs are students experiencing within the universities. And as shown by the data below, each university bears a different burden when it comes to this issue and therefore has to address it in very unique ways. So I'll do a quick summary of the original survey that was conducted. This may be new information for regions that have recently joined the board. I last presented this with former student regent Nikhil Dave back in 2021. So this is that information just for context. So during the 2020 to 2021 academic year, it was shown that 16% of students at ASU and U of A and 20% at NAU experienced very low food security, while 10% of ASU students, 27% of NAU students, and 19% of University of Arizona students experienced low food security. And it should be noted that the ASU survey was based over the prior 30 days, whereas NAU and U of A, it was over the span of 12 months. And similarly for housing insecurity, it was shown that 14% of ASU students, 19% of NAU students, and 8% of U of A students experienced this issue. So in response, the universities have taken this recommendation from the board and implemented strategies on campus and moved towards alleviating this issue. So I would now like to highlight some of those efforts in this past year and also just stress that these are the highlights. There's a whole document. I would encourage you to take a look at it. I believe it's been posted on the board website that you can see all of the amazing efforts that are being done. But these are some of the ones that stuck out to highlight. So starting with Arizona State University, they recorded a 51% increase in visitations to their basic needs landing page. And it was determined that education and marketing of the resources available to students was one of the largest parts in addressing this issue, that they didn't know how to access it. So this is an incredible step. They were also able to disperse crisis fund awards to students in need and expanded their work group to 15 members in order to further advance these efforts. They also furthered collaboration with student support services, provided meal cards and meal swipes to students in need, and reevaluated financial support when students experience burdens such as illness or unforeseen hardship. And one of the most important factors, they enhanced their marketing to students in order to promote the resources. And this is demonstrated through this massive increase in student engagement with their online resources. So thank you to Arizona State University for that effort. Next, at Northern Arizona University, they launched the Lumberjack Care Center with a $175,000 grant, and this center serves thousands of students. They also expanded their campus pantry to a new location, and that accommodated a 100% growth in usage. They also opened new distribution centers in secondary locations such as the library, the Health and Learning Center, places where students can access it, and also received a grant through St. Mary's Food Bank, which allowed for the purchase of new industrial refrigerators and a freezer this past semester. So that expands the foods that students are able to access, fruits, veggies, frozen meals, in order to increase that quality and also variety in foods that are offered. The Meal Swipes for Jacks program, which provided mini meal plans to students, was expanded this past year. The usage of this program more than doubled over that year, serving 525 students with 3,150 free meals in the spring of 2023 semester, this past semester. And then the Lumberjack Emergency Assistance Fund provided 548 one-time grants to students in need, totaling $274,000. Finally, at the University of Arizona, The Basic Needs Center and Services partnered with over 30 community partners to address student needs. Food from the student union restaurants and university events was distributed through Boxing Up Hunger, which is a program on campus, and the campus pantry raised over $26,000 through the foundation and provided increased food distribution to students in need as a result of the pandemic. Finally, they hosted the inaugural Basic Needs Symposium on campus in fall of 2022, which I was fortunate enough to attend, and I can definitely attest to the fact that there were fantastic conversations surrounding this issue and really great solutions towards eradicating student need on campus. So as illustrated here, student food and housing are just a few dimensions in which well-being can be measured. There's several other factors, but ones such as physical health, quality education, mental well-being, these are all tied together. And so when addressing student need, there's many factors to be addressed. And this is a key issue to attainment in the state of Arizona. However, I'm very encouraged by the work being done in the universities, and I look forward to further data utilizing similar research methods as the original survey, which can look at the and fully illustrate the impact that is being done by these initiatives on student well-being. And with continued effort, I believe that the eradication of food insecurity among university students is a completely attainable goal. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Conyer. Any questions or comments from the board? I just want to say thank you for the student regents continuing to push on this issue, and thank you to the universities for the impacts that they've made. Those are significant outcomes in a single year. At this point, I'm going to move away from normal business, and we are going to honor Regent Rachel Conyer, who is concluding her 2-year service on the board as the student regent. I'm sure I speak for my fellow regents and university presidents when I say that we appreciate your service tremendously, your dedication, and your commitment to the board and the students at our university. Our student regents are absolutely crucial for us to connect with the universities, with the students who are there. And your impact, your involvement has been tremendous. In particular, you were thoughtful. Your leadership is kind and genuine. Your concern for the issues affecting the students and the concrete actions that have resulted in improving students' experiences. Your dedication has been unwavering, and on top of your own busy schedule, as we all know, you found time to regularly meet with student leaders and to discuss matters of concern and to bring them back and to voice them to the board. And I think that's one of the things that is sometimes hard for student regents, is to find their voice when they first get here. And so I appreciate you making the effort and really becoming very, very good at communicating with us. I think that was truly a step. You're also dedicated to the educational attainment and keeping costs down for students. And that advocacy has helped our enterprise innovate on behalf of students. And we appreciate your contributions to our new multi-year tuition model, which I know took a lot of conversations and a lot of explaining to students so that they understood the impact on them. You've served in a number of capacities on the board. And as the voting student regent, you've been assistant treasurer, as a member of the Research and Health Sciences Committee, the Finance and Capital Resources Committee, and the Academic Affairs and Educational Attainment Committee. I don't know that there was anything left. Maybe audit. You missed audit. You'll have to come back.
Come back.
So I would like to thank you for your service. It has been a joy to have you on the board with us. Your dedication to the students has made you an invaluable member of this board. And I know that you don't have firm plans yet. And I know that everybody asks you what you're doing. I know that you get to enjoy the summer in Flagstaff and find your next path. I am confident and enthusiastic about hearing what you decide to do, because whatever it is, it will be a boon to those you're involved with. And I'd like to give you a little token of our appreciation. And I'm now going to open it up to other regents and then the university presidents. Who's on first? Regent Penley?
Could comment. Rachel, I appreciate the report that you presented, but I also appreciate the understanding that you have of continuity. You and I discussed one day whether every student regent needed a unique initiative as opposed to moving things forward that were already on the table and just being a darn good regent and understanding governance. And I appreciate you for all of those things. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Penley.
Chair Manson, Rachel, we had the chance to be at the University of Arizona for the Food Insecurities and Housing Insecurities Forum. And what I noticed down there was the way you worked the room and the way the room frankly worked you. And yes, I was that new regent. I stepped up. I wanted to understand this issue, but I don't know, maybe the difference between us at that point in time was the crowd around you at every break, you know, seeking your insight, your information, really impressed me because again, it showed that one, you know, they understood you were the student regent. They also understood that you were listening and you were involved at that point. And frankly, from that point to here, so much has been done. And I think it was said earlier, you know, hats off to the presidents and the teams from Arizona State, University of Arizona and Northern Arizona to step up, listen and execute. Never perfect, but you know, attainment of goals, better today than we were yesterday, better tomorrow than we were today. I feel confident that this is moving the right direction. And frankly, you have a lot to do with it. So thank you.
Thank you, Regent Brewster.
Presidents?
Well, Rachel, I'll just say that you're with your initial appointment, you were a little bit mysterious to me because you're quiet in your demeanor. And then I watched you and I thought, wow, you have this thing where you listen to everyone. You don't have a preconceived notion that you're attempting just to find evidence to verify. So as you're listening, you derive your own pathway, your own solution. And that is a rare thing. That very few people can do that. And so you could do that naturally and also keep almost everyone happy along the way, which is also a rare ability. I said almost everyone. And so I just saw immense talent. And so I've been one of the ones bugging you about what you're going to do because you have you have massive potential. Christine and I, wherever Christine went, Christine and I have talked about you many times, you know, how we could be helpful to what you want to do, how we could, and so we actually mined a gold mine for you. This is an ASU bag and ASU gold, and it's because we have our graduate programs waiting for you. Oh, and we even have some things in here that are reflective of that. So this is real gold. And then we have things for your desk, which are going to help you in your planning and your note keeping. But we have this one special prize in here for you, which is this. We don't give very many gold stars.
I love that.
Gold star says Rachel Kanya. And it says when you're region 2021 to 2023. So ASU. So, thank you. Congratulations. Thank you. Our presents are never the same. They're reflective of the person. So thank you.
That's great. Well,
But-
now I have other regents who want to speak up. Just lost your turn. No, okay, go ahead. Superintendent Horn and then Regent Herbold and then Regent Mata.
Yeah, you sat next to me during the executive sessions this time. It was my first time back since my first time on the Board of Regents from 2003 to 2011. And I heard a lot of acronyms that I didn't recognize. So I whispered to you, ask what it was, and you were very patient in always telling me what it was. So thank you for that patience.
That's what I'm here for.
Regent Herbold.
She's the ultimate note taker. I don't know if you have noticed, but I think she's keeping book on all of us. So beware. But
dear.
What it demonstrates is her ability to listen, which is a rare and treasured attribute. And keep that. Congratulations and best of luck to you.
Regent Mathis.
Thank you. Well, Regent Kanjur, I can call you Rachel. We have spent many times at the Regent Hotel. What is the Hyatt Hotel? Because we stay at the ASU for the committee. So one of the things that, you know, we shared together was, you know, speak up. Remember, one of the things that I always told Rachel is, don't be intimidated by all of us that look like, you know, mature. And then she said, but she was, and then she started to do it, you know, and that was, you know, I was very impressed. And I said, you know, we are all human and we have, you know, opinions. So give your opinion. And she started to flourish. And that's what I also like about you, because you listen to us, not because we're mature, but because, you know, it's time for you. And I say, you're going to have an amazing career, because just being part of us and, you know, as the part of the regions give you a lot of exposure. So I just wanted to share that, because, you know, one of the things that we always, you know, talk every time we sat together or we were in the hotel, or we talk about that. So, and congratulations, and thank you for all you did for us, and continue, you know, to support everything that we have been doing.
Thank you, Regent Mata.
So Regent Conyer, I would agree with President Crow's assessment. When you first started, you were taking it all in and quiet, and you've probably grown as much as any regent that I've seen in the 6 years that I've been around. And with always, we all learn more from you than you probably learn from us. Now you learn from the process, but I just want to thank you for your leadership and your steady hand, and how much you've meant to me personally, and in listening and asking questions. I recently, and this is probably going to get lost on maybe you and others, but we were recently talking about a recruitment we needed for marketing and communications. And I said, we need someone like E.F. Hutton. When E.F. Hutton spoke, everyone listened. And the person looked at me and said, who's E.F. Hutton? You are the E.F. Hutton of this board, because when you spoke, we all listened and we hung on your every word. Unlike ASU, our gift is always the same. And
there could be.
I've wondered about that, you know, why can't we change that?
It's cool, yeah.
But it is a very cool gift. I've learned to appreciate it more as I've been at the university and been in the mirror lab, and I have a little picture here for you of the mirror lab to let you know how big those mirrors are. Did you ever go to the mirror lab? Yeah, I thought so. That's for you. But you also get a piece of glass that comes from one sole sourced provider in Japan, that is the glass that's melted to make the mirrors of the largest telescopes in the world. And so as I thought about how much this gift really is unique, whatever you do, and I'm sure it's going to become heart surgeon, that you will have this on your desk and people will ask you, what in the world is that? Because it's truly unique. So much so that I've started to think about giving them to our largest donors who have everything. What can you get for someone who has everything? And you've got everything. You've got your future in front of you. And I agree with Chair Manson. We're all eager to see what you do. It doesn't matter, because you're going to be successful. And I just want to thank you for your time on the board and getting to know you better. And I will follow you with great interest. So thank you.
Thank you, President Robbins.
This is always, this thing always falls over. So I'm gonna give it. You're gonna get a picture. We're gonna.
And
quick
then we're
before
gonna
it falls over.
sit it right there, so it doesn't turn.
I don't know how you
First
get
time
that
I've
home
ever
in your
done that
car.
without it turning
I
on.
don't know how you get that home in your car without it
Yeah.
falling. I'm scared.
Radioactive.
Take the glass out.
Yeah.
There you go.
Done it.
President Kuchera.
Bubble wrap.
Well, I just want to echo what everybody has said. We're so proud of you, Rachel, for who you are and what you will do in future years. It's been a pleasure to have you serve as our student regent, representing all students across the 3 public universities here in Arizona, but also particularly gratifying to know that you're a lumberjack. And no matter what Michael is trying to do right now, convert you into a Sun Devil, you're a lumberjack for life. And so everything that has been said here today is not only a reflection of you and your talent and your dedication, but it's also a manifestation of what this great university is about. And so we at Northern Arizona University are so proud to know that you are one of ours. I too cannot wait to see what you will do, and please know that we are here for you in whatever way we can help to advance your aspirations. Now, on behalf of NAU, I want to share a small set of gifts. Now, we wanted it to be bigger, but as you heard from John, our budget is a little compromised. But notwithstanding that, I can say that this represents 27% of the state allocation to NAU this year. No, all kidding aside, not really kidding, but all kidding aside, we have here things that will allow the world to know that you are a lumberjack. An alumni T-shirt, a fleece jacket, an NAU tumbler, and Louis the Lumberjack you can put in the background so that you can get that 10 of 10 room rater rating in your Zooms. An NAU Ultimate Frisbee, so you can intimidate your opponent as a lumberjack. And because we want you back, an NAU disc golf disc, so that you will come and join our various courses here on campus. We're so proud of you. Thank you so much for who you are, what you do, and what you will continue to do for the people of this great state. Congratulations. Thank you very much.
Turn. Smile. Get John out of it.
Low budget.
You want to say anything, Rachel, or are we?
I would. Thank you, Chair Manson. Wow. Yeah, I'm very overwhelmed. I have learned so much during these past 2 years. It's very rare that a student gets an experience like this, and I recognize that. And every day I was so grateful that I got to be surrounded by people that cared so deeply about students in the state of Arizona and focused on different areas, because we have professionals around this table in health and business, and some of you, I don't even know what your job is. You've explained it to me so many times, but you're all experts in something, and you bring specific knowledge to the role that I've gained so much from. And I really appreciate all of the work that you put in on top of also your busy schedules. My introduction to the board was actually through participating in the Regents Cup my sophomore year. And something that has been reiterated over and over again is how important civil discourse is, and not just being convicted in your beliefs, but also knowing how to communicate those effectively and in a way that is kind and productive. And I've really seen that demonstrated throughout my time on the board. So thank you to all of the other regents, to the presidents, and to everyone that I've had the opportunity to cross paths with through the university. I'm sad to leave NAU. I'm sad to leave my term on the board, but I'm very lucky to have had an experience that I care about so deeply that it's hard to leave. So I'm very grateful. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay in touch. President Cruz Rivera, I think I'll give you a few moments for some closing remarks and then we'll have a few.
Thank you very much, Chair Manson. I just want to take this opportunity to thank all of the regents, our fellow presidents, colleagues, members of the Flagstaff community, and other distinguished guests who have made the time to be here with us in a beautiful day in Flagstaff to be part of the important work of the Arizona Board of Regents, work that impacts so many lives across this great state. And I wanted to just take the opportunity to give a big thank you to all of you, especially to the regents, to Chair Manson, Regent Penley and Duval, who have been so instrumental in my onboarding to NAU. Today happens to be my 2-year anniversary as president of Northern Arizona. And I can truly say that I am extremely proud of what this great university has accomplished in the last couple of years in terms of broadening access, boosting attainment, driving economic mobility and social impact for the state of Arizona and beyond. And this is clearly work that would not be possible without the support of the board, the collaboration of the greatest colleagues one could hope for in President Crow and President Robbins. And really, all of this that I'm saying is an excuse to ask everybody in this room to give a big round of applause to my team, the people here who actually do the good work. And so on behalf of the NAU community, please know that we are excited about the work ahead. We're focused and we are very cognizant of the huge responsibility we have to be valuable members of this tri-university system. Thank you very much for the support and thank you for being here in Flag. And if I want to just make this proposition, given that the board has several meetings throughout the year, let's just make them all here. You know, it's the best place.
Two of them don't have snow tires.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Before we move on to just a few housekeeping items, I understand Regent Duval has a few words he'd like to say.
You understand correctly. First, congratulations. Happy second year.
Thank you.
Mr. President, delighted. Thank you for sharing with us that it was a beautiful day in Flagstaff. I don't think any of us had a chance to notice, but we'll take it on faith. Rachel, I didn't come in earlier, but you're just terrific, smart, organized and all of that. But there's a bumper sticker because nice matters. And niceness is going to carry you a very long way, and you really are. So I hope I should add, I hope your parents watched, and if not, I know that Tom will make available the live feed that you will want to review this again because of the wonderful sentiment that people feel about you. So I do hope you capture that. Hello. You know, I think it's somehow appropriate that the President Cruz Rivera's 2-year anniversary is on Lyndall Manson Day. And
Is that one time or ongoing?
Well, I'm not sure. I think if we're going to annually celebrate your anniversary, I think we can always tie it.
Right, yeah.
To Lyndall Manson Day. And you know, I certainly can't do honor to equal the mayor bringing that proclamation, but I'm not going to let this moment pass without saying something on my behalf and the board. We salute you, Chair, on your 2 years. You are the quintessential public servant. You are dedicated, absolutely public service oriented. I hearken back. I got a phone call from Regent Manson the first time we met, and she revealed herself. She said, "So this is Lyndall Manson, and I want to take you to lunch because I want to know what makes you tick." And I thought, I kind of like this take charge attitude, and that it was evident from the first lunch that, in fact, that is exactly who and what she's about. And that take charge capacity and caliber has been so evident in so many ways. Obviously, co-chairing the search committee here at NAU, magnificent success. You along with Regent Penley, really driving these performance metrics, which, you know, I don't think anybody who wasn't part of it can appreciate how much time it took, because there were so many ways to go, and you drove it home. You know, wouldn't have anticipated that you would become sort of the mother of the coaching contract reform, but you did, and hugely important. But most importantly, and it's the legacy where we still have more work, and I know that you will lead it in your remaining time on the board, and that is the increasing strategic differentiation of the three campuses. It's a natural outgrowth of your leadership and work on the metrics, and you are obviously the right person to bring that home. I knew you came from Wall Street, but if I hadn't, watching you manage a balance sheet certainly put it into full display that you had that background, and you did it very well. But beyond your legacies, I just want to address some of your personal qualities. You know, I've been around this board a long time. I have never come across anyone who is more prepared for every topic than you are. We get 500-page briefing books. She reads every paragraph, puts it in context, asks the right questions. Now, I don't want to out anybody else. I don't read every page of the briefing book. It's a massive undertaking, and she is always the most prepared person in the room. Chair, you are collaborative, but at the same, and you have a wonderful, warm spirit about you, but you never shy away from the hard questions. And in that regard, your leadership has been apparent. The fact that you served for 2 years, and as John noted earlier, served on the chair's team for 4 years is sort of beyond the call of duty, and that you did it while managing a complicated growing business and losing beloved, wonderful Michael is extraordinary. Of your many legacies, I'm going to guess that beyond landing our meetings on time, the one you are most proud of is your commitment to general education and free speech. You are a patriot who believes passionately in the country's institutions and the potential for every American to excel. And your commitment to free speech was the right commitment in the right chair at the right time, as we have gone through this controversy in the United States and here in Arizona, Regents Cup, et cetera. So I'll wrap it up just to say you are a pleasure to work with and an honor to be a friend.
Thank you. You had me until you talked about Michael. Hang on just a second. I'll pull it together. This has been one of the most exquisite board experiences of my life. I've served on many, I've chaired many. This group of people, these organizations, I can't begin to explain what it is to have a team of people, a board that has this much capacity and is so willing to give. It is unusual. We are, of most of the boards that I've been on, we are probably the most cooperative, the most looking for positive solutions, and dealing with the biggest issues that I've dealt with. Each of the regents has an extraordinary capacity, and I think the composition that we have leads to really good discussions and decision-making. And I thank each and every one of you for your part in making my job easy in managing the board. Staff, holy cow, we couldn't do it without you guys. You have made me successful. And that's John, that's you, that's Jenny, that's Chad, that's every single one of you that I have worked with on a project or asked for something. It's extraordinary and it's unusual. The universities, the presidents, every time I make a phone call, there's an immediate response. There's a willingness to answer the blunt question that I ask. There's, and it's just, I don't have time to piddle around with it. I just kind of need to know the answer. And I find that the answers are much more complicated than I thought the question was 99% of the time, but you're willing to lead us through that. And that's hugely important. Don't give up on that. University staff, faculty, and students. You're why we're here. You're why we do this. You're why I do this. So I'll let you guys on a little secret. When I was approached and asked to be on the Board of Regents, I called up a friend of mine who used to work at NAU, who now works for ABOR. And I said, what is this? I had never heard of it. Didn't know what it was. No idea. And we went out hiking and she goes, well, this is what it is. And you'd be really good at it. You should do it. I'm like, really? She's like, yeah, absolutely. And so that was kind of my initiation into the Board of Regents. I didn't really totally know what I was getting myself into. But I am extraordinarily grateful for the opportunity and the exposure. And I think, you know, I'm not done in the board yet, but my time in leadership is done when, well, I still have a few more weeks left, don't I? It's not over yet. That's right. I get UAGC.
And it.
But it's been extraordinary and I can't thank you all enough.
No, thank you.
All right. That concludes the public session of our meeting. Few announcements before we adjourn. For those attending this evening's reception, it begins at 5:30 in the 1899 Bar and Grill across the street on the patio. And as a reminder for the Regents, the special board meeting and executive session board retreat is scheduled to begin at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Are we in 1899? Okay. And with that, I'd like to thank again President Cruz Rivera and his staff, Director Arnold and the board staff for their work on this meeting. It is a major undertaking and we are now adjourned.
Hit the cap. Yes.
One last time.